On the air, man.
It's been a while, actually. I'd forgotten how long it'd been until Tim had told me.
Yeah, Phil, have you noticed something that's really bizarre? I don't know if it's just because we're getting a little older. These years are starting to go a little quicker. Have you felt that way? Like all of a sudden, we're 1 week from August, right?
Well, I'm an old fart, so time is whizzing by for me.
So, Phil, do you remember when you were a kid? Older people would say that to you, right? Like, oh, kid, when you get older, it just goes, and time is like it's like a blink. Because do you know when I used to think that, ironically enough, is that now the coin is flipped, right? Do you remember when you knew people who were much older than you? Let's say you were 12 or 14, and they were like 55, and they could recount exact events, how they felt, and you're like, how are you able to remember all this? Because Phil, have you ever actually had your lifetime stamped? Like, I'll give you an example. I have an EverDrive, the regular Nintendo, right? The original NES. You turn it on, and Legend of Zelda, 1986. Phil, I remember when Zelda 1 was new, right? There were no sequels. It was just called The Legend of Zelda. It was a gold cartridge. And so when I tell someone like, "Oh yeah, man, this is when Zelda came out. This is when Mike Tyson's Punch Out came out," it's like I'm telling people this because in my mind it hasn't been 35 years, right? Because you think about you think about it. That's how fast it happens, right? Like I can remember going down to my cousin's house. We went down in the basement. I remember playing these games, and like you just look at it. I was studying like, dude, certain games, Russian Attack. It's like this came out in 1988. I remember when this was new.
Is that RPM?
Oh, snap.
We knew he was going to be here, didn't we?
Bill, thank you for the article.
No problem, my good man.
I would have never thought that you would have sent me one.
It's a pleasure to be of service.
Oh my gosh. But that just goes to show you, men around the world are just fed up and they're not taking any prisoners anymore.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that RPM because, last time Phil was on, Phil, we talked about how more and more guys are just checking out of like everything, right? Like workforce, dating, marriage. They're just kind of like, yeah, I'm just kind of good. And the dudes who are in it, Phil, RPM talks about this on his channel. I remember when I first found him, and he talks about it's a surreal feeling to get the red pill while married, right? Like he said RPM described it as literally being asleep, and all of a sudden it's like that'll snap. You wake up like, wait, what? And you understand. Wait a minute, these are the games being played on me by the wife, right? And all of a sudden it clicks. But you're married. You've already made that you already got that state contract with the devil, right? You and Palpatine want the power to save the one you love. In this case, it's you and your freedom and your sanity. And RPM described that. I just remember thinking like, man, I mean, I'm out here on the outside thinking, hey, Phil, it sucks, but damn, being married and finding out.
I'm surprised that that we as MGTOW men aren't vastly outnumbered by these men who are awakened while married. Maybe we are, and they just haven't actually said anything thus far, but there must be so many more of them than us.
Well, you know what, RPM, I want your take on this. As a married man, we all here have talked about guys who are married. Do you feel that you've seen more of it? Like, I'm not saying guys are like full on red pill, but like let's just say that they're red pill aware, and that by asking a guy, or even if a guy says, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Phil, don't ever get married, right? You've heard guys say that. That means they have to be self-aware, right? Like they realize, oh shit, I made a deal with the devil, right? Like, oh, I'm not in control of my family or in this household. Like, I'm not in control. I have no real power. I see the games being played. And they kind of realize that. And, RPM, you talked about that, where a lot of guys will open up to you and like, yo, man, it sucks. I talked to Team Sneed earlier tonight, Cuck Simulator, right? And last time we had him on the first time, shout out to Team Sneed, by the way. Oh, he's in the chat too. Yeah, I see him. He talked about how the game Cuck Simulator hit too close to home for certain people, right? But that means that they're self-aware. Like they realized, right? They signed up and they said, "Yeah, Phil, I love her. Let me give you my ring." And all of a sudden it hits. And this goes into what RPM said. The guy who puts on the hockey mask is not Dollhouse Phil. It's not Drex. It's not RPM. It's the blue pill simp, the cuck. That's who puts on the hockey mask.
I'll go along with that.
Yeah, well,
I got a couple of questions I wanted
go
to.
ahead.
Yeah, a couple questions in the chat I want to address before. I'm just going to mute myself for tonight, but because you guys just take it away. But for someone who asked why they can't send super chats, we got demonetized finally. No, it's only a temporary thing. It's just some paperwork shit that we got to deal with.
Tip. That's not the reason. The reason is I haven't gone and blown Susan's back out. Phil, I will promise you guys here. Look, dude, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, man. Tim, next week, maybe the week after, we're gonna actually, I'm gonna make a video addressing Susan directly. Then I'm coming to Smash.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and let her know. And I have a picture of TFM. If someone can send us something with TFM, and as you guys know, I'm gonna get TFM back on YouTube, fully monetized. I am gonna blow Susan's horse face back, fam.
Yeah, for anyone asking why we're not doing streams with TFM, it's because TFM is banned from YouTube, man.
He's banned from everything.
And what else? What other question did they have in the chat there? Oh yeah, and I do know that Yellow Flash is streaming too. Look, it's a Drex and Phil stream, guys. You can go watch Yellow Flash, come back, and we'll still be going.
I love Yellow Flash. Yeah, I absolutely. Shout out to Yellow Flash, by the way. I know he's probably even has Nick on right now in Star Wars Girls, Seesaw, all them, and probably Tug, and he always has RGE on. So if those guys are out there streaming also, bad timing on our part, but yeah, shout out to all of them if they're streaming right now.
But yeah, well, speaking of Yellow Flash, she's absolutely another guest that I'm looking to get on here. Everyone loved RGE coming on.
Oh yeah, that was fun. The Eagle.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great one. I was actually thinking of doing this kind of hit me randomly as an idea, but if you're familiar with the game show, an old game show from the 90s called Hollywood Squares, where you asked celebrities questions and they'd give you like a joke response first, and then they'd give you an actual response, and you had to either agree or disagree with the celebrity or the comedian in order to win a square. And there was 9 of them arranged in a tic-tac-toe board. And essentially you win the game by answering the questions correctly and getting 3 in a row or 5 squares first.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that game.
Yeah,
I remember it like vaguely.
We could do it with all MGTOW
Square. Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, Tybeard absolutely will come on as a guest too. It'll happen.
He just texted me tonight. Ty just sent me a picture. He made a comment. You guys would love this. This is classic Ty Beard. He sends me a text saying, "Well, I understand the risk of saying this to you, but you haven't lived until you've danced to Achy Breaky Heart in Spanish with a dancing robot." Yeah, Ty Beard is out and about with his daughters and wife and some friends, and there's a literal dancing robot, man. So shout out to our man Ty Beard. We'll definitely get you on. I'll actually see Ty semi soon, within the next couple of months. I'm headed back to Dallas. Not for that purpose, sort of. I'll be back in Dallas, and I'll see Ty Beard.
Well, if you start talking about robots, we all know where the conversation is going to go with me.
Especially when you talk to a lawyer, Phil. We'll talk between legalizing a whole bunch, and we'll have RPM sitting right there with a big thumbs up, because I'm starting to see. I'm not going to say I see more guys just saying, like, I'm going to get a doll, but Do you guys believe that it's more of like a process? Like, because remember, I don't think most guys go from, marriage to doll, right? Usually they have to deal with certain things, and the dating market is complete trash, right? And it's like a process, right? I feel like because like most guys don't just say doll, right? They usually they go through something and they start pushing, and they're kind of like, I'm just kind of done. You know what I'm saying?
I see it in the comment sections on a lot of my videos. Guys are like, yeah, I was thinking about it. Then maybe a few months later, it was like, thank you, RPM. I got a doll. Thank you. So yeah, it's usually a process. It's not spontaneous.
Yeah. I don't think you go I don't think you go 0 to 100. I don't think you go from blue pill simp relationship guy to doll like overnight. Like I think it takes a while for it to break down, because what you know what I think ends up happening. I think you try to rationalize things. You try to find a solution, right? Because that's what men do, right? It's like,
yeah, it's like going through the stages of grief.
Facts. So RPM, I dated this girl. Then that didn't work out. So I dated a different kind of girl. That didn't work out. TFM talks about that, right? He was like, I dated this kind of girl. Then I tried this kind of girl. He said that he dated a girl that was a chubby chick. He wanted to make it like his little like fixer upper, he called it, right? And I've done this too. Because if you were to look at my girlfriends in the past, I didn't date very often because I'd rather just smash. My girlfriends look dramatically different, right? I had a girl who had like a surfboard body when I was in middle school. I had a girl who was a thick chick. I had a girl who was like the athletic girl. She was a tennis player. Like, you went through different types of girls. I'm sure you were in the same boat, right, Phil? Where you try different, like, let me get a girl who's like this. Let me try it. And what ultimately led me to just give up was when I was dealing with my friend Big Booty Shannon's younger sister. Because I'm like, and that was like the final straw. I said, because I wasn't looking to date, and I said, if it doesn't work with someone that you already know, right? Because think about it, Phil, if you guys meet a girl tonight, right? You just met her today, right? So whatever baggage she has, whatever her issues, you only know her in this moment, right? But if you know someone that you've already known for years, Phil, years, it's kind of like, like let's say, Phil, you talk to a girl from, let's say you're 35 years old and you've known this girl since you were 20, right? Maybe you met her at college or something, right? And you've seen how she operates, and you're like, hey man, she ain't out here turbo thought and blah blah blah. You're like, okay, cool. And just the timing is right where the stars kind of align a bit, and you're thinking, well, hey, I mean, I'm not saying we grew up together, but hey, I mean, we've known each other for a significant amount of time. Our families tend to know each other. We should be. This has to work, right? And when that doesn't work, you're kind of like, wait a minute. And that's when you kind of have that moment, right, Phil? You're like, it's time to just bow out.
I don't know when my moment of realization was, but what I was doing was, rather than I tried this girl, that didn't work out, so I'm going to try this type of girl. The girls just matched what was happening in my life at the time. And over, I don't know, say an 8-year period or something like that, I realized I'd had like a number of really different types of girls, and they were all just fit for the moment. There was no keepers or anything like that. And I obviously had like a number over that many years. And that's when I started to think, they all seem much of a muchness. They've all got the same kind of thing to them. They're good for the moment, but not for like the rest of time. So I kept on thinking, well, never say never. It might happen. I might meet the one or something like that. But if I don't, I'm not going to shed a tear over that. Mm-hmm. So, and that's been my attitude. Like, I've often thought, if I was some sort of addict for something, be that drugs, alcohol, or whatever, that would be my attitude. Say if it was alcoholism, just have a bottle of whiskey by the mantelpiece or something like that. It's all like, if you really need a drink, it's just there. That makes it easier for me to actually give something up. Mm-hmm. As I always had like a woman nearby or easy enough to get, it's been fairly easy for me to just say, nah, I don't care anymore. I'm okay.
No more. I remember saying, RPM, what about you, man? Did obviously, you're the guy who's married now. That's why you're, red pill married. But like, what was like the moment where it clicked for you?
Ooh. I would definitely say the moment that everything just kind of, well, I finally just said, you know what, to hell with it, was after the meat sack actually started working. And when she actually got her job, when she got her nursing license and she started working, and of course, you know, the disrespect came, and I was just like, you know what? Things are not going to go too well. But by then, I had already saw what was coming because I had already been watching a lot of red pill channels. And unlike most married guys, it didn't come as a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, RPM, I got a question for you. You're obviously familiar with Coach Greg Adams. Shout out to CGA, by the way. He has a video that I think spoke to a lot of married men, and it was called The Marriage Wheel. And I'll never forget this video because I sent it to my married buddy, right? And this dude modeled for Nike, right? Successful, you know, tall, dark, and handsome. We played ball together. He's about 6'4". Well, I'm talking ripped dude, great looking guy. He gets married inexplicably, right? Like, dude, you have endless options. Why would you do this? And I sent him that video, man. And he's like that dude that's just like like he knows. I feel like you've been through this, right? Like a buddy of yours, he knows it. He just doesn't want, because if he admits it, then he admits basically that he's like he basically self-sabotage. Like, if I admit all of this is true, then I'm basically saying like, yeah, I'm basically he basically cucked himself, right? Like, and he's not a cuck, like in terms of like, you know, his wife's not out there getting plowed, but like, you guys know how it is. She starts siphoning off the sex. She starts getting a little disrespectful, a little mouthy. It doesn't matter how alpha you think you are. She's gonna turn you into a beta, right? So I sent her the marriage wheel, and I remember that video. Like RPM just said, the comment sections. I pay attention to the comment sections, and you know what I saw from that video, guys? There were lots of men in that comment section of that marriage wheel video that said, "This is me." Like literally, like dude, this is literally my marriage tick for tack.
yep.
Would you say there's many men in that situation who are too afraid of what it takes to get out of that cycle wheel? And that's the problem.
Yeah, well, Coach Greg Adams talks about the turning point of every marriage, in his opinion, and I agree with him completely. It's the bait and switch. Because if you ask any married guy, that includes RPM, I'm assuming the meat sack was different when you guys were dating compared to engaged. And then even when you first got married, you were thinking, hey, everything's going good. I don't know where people get this whole story about how marriage changes and she's going to change. And then the bait and switch happened, right? Where you went, wait a minute, this person is different from the person that I dated, right? What was the bait and switch moment for you, RPM?
Oh, there was a Christmas party that she went to, and I was not invited to said Christmas party, even though she said it was being held on a military base. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? This is not adding up. So, of course, at that time, she started talking about a potential work husband. I knew, okay, my replacement is being primed right now. Or somebody, there's another bull in the ring.
Mm-hmm. That's so unfortunate, man, and the lack of respect out there. And I will say this though, Phil, what do you think about this thing? You know, I just did a video where I made some criticisms about the manosphere, right? Like there's some gripes that I have, and I'm sure other guys have kind of pointed out you know, there's just these little things about the manosphere that's just, it's off. Like when guys talk about, you know, get you a young girl and blah, blah. Now, Phil, I want to ask you this. In modern times, a lot of these manosphere guys talk about getting the, you know, youth, beauty, fertility. We get that. They talk about how these older women are like walled out, stalled out. I would argue, Phil, I want your take. The older women, because they were in a different generation, let's say a woman who's like 45 today, right? I would argue she has a lower body count than most of these young chicks today.
I would say generally, yeah. the generational thing does make a huge issue because, like, back when I was a young buck, things were definitely different to what they are now. However, that's compounded by the whole thing that I'd noticed even as a young man. When you go beyond the wall and then a woman hits menopause, when you take out all of the hormonal craziness, which that is just estrogen, progesterone, and all of that, women start to make actually really decent decisions. Actually, by the time they actually get beyond that point, and the hormonal thing isn't starting to addle their brain. So that's when I think actually women really reach adulthood from a mental perspective. Yep. So that's where I see a bigger difference. But I know exactly what you're talking about from the generational aspect, because I've lost count of the amount of times I've been talking to younger guys and say, it's all right for me to say this, but it was different when I was your age. It really was. And like these guys just look at me and go, well, I've got nothing to compare this with. So like, it's just some old guy just waxing lyrical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely agree 100%. I mean, RPM, you must have seen it.
Yeah. Yep. So many, a lot of the older women are, I would say they're trying to compete with the younger women because with a lot of the younger women, they had social media, and a lot of the older women, like the Gen X women my age, we didn't have social media. So that's why a lot of the Gen X women are still trying to compete. And since there are so many ways that, boob implants, all the fake up and stuff. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great oversight by the manosphere, is that there's this, I call it manosphere myths, right? Like I have written it down in my notes about, and Phil and RPM, I want you guys to answer this since, you guys are a little older than me. And one of the biggest issues I have with the manosphere myths is that these guys keep on talking about the traditionalism of the 1950s America. Obviously, in your case, Phil, in the UK. Phil, if you go back literally one generation, what did the men, when you were growing up, and you RPM, what were the men saying the women were like and life was like one generation back? So that would have been like your father's generation, like, because everyone keeps saying the 1950s was this perfect era. And I'm here to tell you guys, and I know you guys would agree, the men weren't like happy back then. They were drinking a lot because, like, man, I got to deal with these goddamn kids.
God, no. I mean, I've had this conversation with my father, who's a true boomer, for all that we come out with boomer jokes. So he's a baby boomer. And I've often had conversations with him and said, well, like, why would you tolerate that sort of behavior? And he would just kind of shrug his shoulders and go, oh, that's just women. You just have to get on with it. Now, back in his day, you had all of the authority and the responsibility. So you could kind of go along with that sort of thinking. But women were still shit back then. But like, if needs be, back then, you could pull out the pimp hand and everything would get straightened. Whereas now, you even just bring out the pimp hand and just kind of do this, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in court and there's a whole fucking wall of hair just coming your way. So women haven't changed. It was just the environment that was different back then. So like it's no different. Women were just as shit. They just had less scope to do what they're doing as they are today.
Agree. What do you think, RPM?
Same.
Mm-hmm.
Once the environment changed and I'm just gonna say let females be unleashed. Yeah, that was it. So
yeah, game over. And this is the reason why I brought that up. Phil, I was at Anime Matsuri, and I met Vic Mignogna and his mom, Mama Vic. And I was like, because I'm going to end up doing an interview with her. And I was like, I can't wait to get her on to dispel all these rumors that the 1950s America was literal perfection. Because, Phil, here's what I don't understand. Every religious text talks about female nature, right? It doesn't matter what religion you come from. They talk like, dude, do not ever surrender your power to these creatures, or your society will collapse. Every religious book says that. And yet, dudes are like, the 1950s, when she was just a good housewife. She wasn't a good housewife. She was playing the role because she didn't have an option to be an OnlyFans Thot. If you were to take those women back then, Phil, and you know how women are, Here's the thing. RPM talks about this. If you were to take, if we had a time machine, right, and we took women from the 1950s and brought them here, they would be culture shocked initially, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe these women are dressing like this, act like this.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. They would become the exact women of this era, right? Conversely, and this is what RPM says, if you get a woman from overseas, you have to keep her in that environment. If you bring her back, she will become the exact woman you resent, because TFM has talked about this. All women want to be where they don't have any restrictions, right? So when you meet that Eastern European woman and you go, she's a traditionalist, Phil. I tell you, RPM, she cooks, she cleans, she respects men. Yeah, because her environment doesn't let her thought it up. But bring her out of that environment, she'll flip.
Until.
Well, TFM brought it up that he actually talked about a video wherein they interviewed the lady, right? It was kind of like almost like a I want to say like an Amish kind of setting, right? Where like the man had total authority and stuff. The women literally said, I don't like it, but basically like, this is my life. Like basically I'm playing the role. I don't like being told what to do, but this is what it is. So that goes to show you they don't want to be in that situation. But the moment you take them out of that environment, surprise.
Well, you may actually have that because we're listening to what women say, and there's a bit of an error in that instruction. Because if you take the woman out of that environment and put them in today's environment, and they're thoughting it up, they're doing whatever that they want, they have no restrictions, they're still not happy. And I would say they're more correct, they're being more truthful when they say it today than they would talk about, say, the 1970s or even the 1950s. Because they say they were actually happier, but they might be saying, I'm not happy because I've got restrictions. But they're just like rebelling against the conformity of the time. That's all that is. They were definitely having a better time. They had more family. They had more things around them, more things to, dare I say, show off to their girlfriends. Because that's what everything is to women. If I can show everything I've got off to my girlfriends, it's almost like jealousy. It's almost like a currency to women. And that's kind of what makes them happy.
Hey, RPM, how many times have you seen that where like, I'm a bigger guy, and I've been in that situation where I could tell I was being treated almost like a trophy. Like I can think of times in my life I was in that position. I know there's some guys out here who have been in that position where they literally like prop you up, like, and here he is, right? Like, whether it be to their coworkers, to their sisters, to their like somebody, like they literally showed you off. Whereas with guys, like yes, guys do have like the trophy wife syndrome, but like as a general rule of thumb, Phil, we talked about this in a live Q&A. With men don't care if you, Phil, have the same preference and predilection that I do. So if I say, hey Phil, I love me some BBWs, and you say you love a girl who's a surfboard, shaming you doesn't change your preference, right? Like we don't have a hive mind. You just go like this. RPM likes Asian girls. He likes Asian persuasion. Phil may like a black girl. I may like a thick Becky. All of us can coexist. Like we don't really like, and you've seen this, right? Like you'll be out, like let's say a barbecue, or you're just hanging out watching a game, and different guys have different types of girls. It doesn't bother us. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, there's your girl. Hey Cindy. Hey Angelique. Whatever. What's up, Julie? And everyone just sits down and does their thing. But with women, they have to always be like, well, we got to compare and contrast. And that's why I feel, if you notice, a woman will dump a guy who's a garbage man making really good money, because a garbage man is not a glamorous job, right? And it's like, oh my God, but how am I going to tell my friends in society that I'm with a garbage man? But yet the garbage man makes more than the guy who has that fancy job title but makes no money, right? He makes $60,000. The garbage man makes $100,000.
Yeah, absolutely. I was with a girl one time. We were only spending the day in Rome, but she spent the whole day running around to take photographs so she could show off to her girlfriends rather than enjoying the day in Rome itself. So what was the point from my perspective? I thought this was a waste of a day. But she was all about showing her girlfriends, and what a great time that she is going to show that she did have, although she didn't actually have. She spent the day just running around taking photos, which wasn't fun. But that's the only thing that meant anything to her. And that was, I mean, I kind of already knew female nature kind of at the time, but I was just watching it in motion in real life going, Jesus Christ, nothing means anything to you women, does it?
Well,
It's just what the jealousy that you can elicit from your friends is the only thing that matters.
Well, Phil, it's funny you say that because one of the things that makes your story so powerful is that it's a microcosm of the way their brain is wired, right? Because here's the thing: if me, you, RPM, all the guys in the Discord right now, if we all went on a guys bonding trip, it doesn't matter if we all have the same interests, whatever. No matter what, we're going to find a way to have a good time, right? But we're going to enjoy the land where we are, right? You may like a different food place, and we'll always reconnect. Oh, hey man, Bowser wants to go over here. Invader wants to go over there. Hey guys, you guys eat that food. I'm not a big fan of Thai. I'll go over here to this Italian joint, but let's meet back here and then go to the Coliseum and check it out. Hey guys, let's go on this little hike. Some guys don't like to hike, and we always keep going like this, right? We branch out, reconnect, branch out, reconnect. The common goal is for us to have a great time, right? And with women, like you said, Phil, taking the pictures, the social validation, right? That was her aim. Your aim was to enjoy Rome. So RPM has talked about that, where that's why when these girls do that, RPM did that video of the girl who walks through New York City talking about, I'm going to show about all this harassment and blah, 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 blah. It's all about the social validation of, look at me going after the patriarchy. But yet in reality, she's not happy because she's like, I really like that attention. That's why Jessica Valenti, TFM, did that video where, do you remember that, Phil? In one article, she says, we need to get rid of public catcalling. And then the next article, I miss it. You can't.
So it doesn't matter what you do, what you say, they're never happy. So as TFM has said it before, bitch is going to bitch. So just don't listen to them. Just get on with what you're doing anyway.
Yeah, if you think about it, though, in RPM, you know this. That's why ultimately they were happier back in the day, because they had a structure. Because men, it's kind of goes to what Phil just said. If all the men back then just went, that's just how women are, and they were like, and they were telling them no, and they had the authority to tell them no, and they had to conform, the women would pout. And this is what changed. Like a child, they would pout initially, right? And then realize the value later because it was delayed gratification, right? Now what we have is this instant gratification culture where it's like this, no, Phil, I want this and I want it now. And then you have to keep appeasing them by law, basically, right? Because if you don't, that's financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual, everything is abuse now, right? So now imagine, Phil, you give them everything they want and you give it to them now. And then what happens? Like a spoiled child, they're never happy. Whereas before, it was like, oh yeah, we're good.
I might have hit the magic button on that one back in the day when I was actually having relationships with women. Because I would say, right, we'll have a joint account, which I know is normally a no-no, but that was for things like rent, amenities, food, stuff like that, things that we would both put money in together. So I made her the weak link in the chain. So if it was going to be a case of like, oh, we want to go on holiday. I said, right, okay, how are you going to afford that? Because you have to pay your 50%. And that made her the limiter on everything. So she became her own weak link in the chain. So she always had to think about how she was going to be able to manage stuff. Whereas it would be difficult, I think, today to actually make me the domestic violence guy in terms of emotional or financial abuse in that respect, because she kind of agreed to it. But maybe I'm wrong, but like it seemed to work. I just said, just make everything like you wanted equality. Did you vote at the last election? Yes. Oh, in that case, you can pay your 50%.
Yep.
And that seemed to work. And when you do that, you said, well, you agreed to that. You've said yes to it. She has no comeback with that.
Yeah.
So she would be stabbing a little foot.
Yep. They try to worm their way out of it first. And when they can't, because they're like, you can't deny that you said yes to these terms and conditions. And I'm sure RPM I think you made a video about women in the military with the draft. All of a sudden, they don't want to be feminists anymore.
Did you see the current tweet that's up?
Whoa, which one is that?
There was actually a recent tweet. I think Coach Greg Adams had it on his community tab where they was talking about the Democrats were talking about having women sign up for the draft. And immediately there was a feminist that said, "That's enough equality for today."
Yep. 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 There's actually there was a guy who made a video. He actually posted multiple responses to that same thread, right? Like so it was a video, and he just started showing these Twitter responses, right? All these chicks suddenly, and there was a woman who said, "Okay, I'm ready to go back in the kitchen." So suddenly, and I keep telling, and this is the reason why, like I said, I'm not mad at women. It's the simps. That's who created this environment. Because at the end of the day, it goes back to what Phil said. Had they raised their hand, they kept the pimp hand strong and said, no. That's all you had to say, Phil, was no. If guys had just said no, women would have been happier, men would have been happier, there would have been more relationships. Not that relationships are really a good thing, because like your dad said, they were always a headache. And this is the reason why one of the things that I want you guys to take on this. I criticized Kevin Samuels for making this comment. He said, men and women are happier together. I beg to differ. Men are happy when they are alone, solitude, because it's peace. The only way to get peace and quiet in life as a man is to not have a woman in your life. You cannot get peace and quiet, because by design, here's the thing, men and women are yin and yang. Men appreciate peace and quiet and solitude, right? Women love chaos and drama. So by default, if you have a woman in your life, you will have chaos and drama. And
I can personally attest to that. This last year and a half, I have had absolutely the most peace that I've had in the last, I would definitely say, almost 25 years.
damn,
I've just been alone, and I've just been so damn relaxed and content.
I mean, I love it. I'm sure you're the same way, Phil.
It's now the norm for me, because I think I'm going on for something about 8 years now without even any sort of real contact with, romantically speaking, with a woman. And it's become normal now for me to just have like a really peaceful, serene life. So when some woman, I may not even be involved with her or anything like that, just comes into my life, and the turmoil that just happens with having a woman in your life, I become really intolerant of it and say, look, just take that shit and fuck off. I don't care. I'm not trying to be like really abrupt or anything like that, but it's just take your chaos and do that with someone else. I don't care. I don't want it. I don't want you. And they, as you said, they pout, they stamp their little feet, and they try and get your attention. And then when you turn your back on them, they then walk away all on their own. But it's been a massive difference. You won't know this until you actually do it. But when you actually realize how serene and peaceful life can be, you realize just how tense you are all the time by having a woman around. And I'm not trying to be anti-woman here or anything like that, but I had to take myself out of the environment to realize just how peaceful life can be. And once you notice that, you're like, I am not walking back into the lion's den once again. I just don't want to do it. I mean, if there's a woman out there who can match my level of serenity, which we know there isn't, then I'm quite happy to have a relationship with her. So it's, again, this harks back to what I was saying about me giving something up. I have to be able to say never, and always leave the door open, rather than go full cold turkey. And that just seems to work for me. I don't know about other guys.
Well, Phil, I want to ask you guys this. One of the criticisms I have, I love Fresh and Fit. I think they really expose a lot of just how the modern woman thinks. There's one major gripe I have with Fresh and Fit, and I can't get over it. They have all this female knowledge, female nature knowledge. They're out here spitting all this red pill facts, right? Yet at the end of all that, they're still talking about dating, right?
Yeah, it's almost as though when we talk about the stages of grief, they're still in some sort of like negotiation phase or something like they're trying to outthink the system.
Yep. And that's like I said, I love Fresh and Fit. I think they're great for the manosphere, but like if I ever were to, have them on, I would really, because I know they were just on Tim Pool, I would grill them about that. I said, hold on now. You guys are admitting all the problems. You guys are spot on. You don't hear me arguing any points. Yet at the end of all that, you still think that and this is the problem I have with all the guys who send in chats to Fresh. I see these guys sending in super chats. it's like you just said, they're still in the negotiation phase. But what if I do this? What if I get a prenup? What if it's like Dr. Dre just got divorced. I know you guys saw that. RPM, you're in California. What do you feel about a man having to pay $300,000 a month for a woman that didn't help him produce one beat in the studio?
Oh, you saw my video. You didn't see my video that I put out?
No, I didn't catch it.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was called Dr. Dre's divorce just killed many future marriages.
Yep.
Absolutely. I echo the sentiment. Now, perhaps I'm a little bit more cynical on this, but
if you really want my honest opinion, I'm just gonna say exactly what I said in that video. There should be a hockey mask wearing magician to abracadabra her.
Oh yeah. You listen. I'm not saying Dr. Dre should go over to the isotoner store and start trying on gloves like a particular tailback from USC, but you know what?
That's one of the things I was noticing. It was worded in the case or the sentence, let's call it, until she dies.
Yep.
And I'll just say, like, they're putting it in black and white for you. You know what to do. Like, just take 1 month's alimony, give it to someone, and say, make this pain go away.
Yep. And the amounts are so out of control. But you know, though, I didn't see RPM's video, but I did see Lion and MGTOW's video, and he had that same sentiment. And you guys are all right because we all see the same thing. We see the writing on the wall. The problem.
Every video that I've seen on Dr. Dre, there's been a substantial amount of comments saying, she might need to take a dirt nap, but not in those words.
Yep.
Just saying.
they go ahead, they're going to put on the Jason mask, and it is what it is. And one of the things that's funny about the Dr. Dre thing, which is what Phil said, Lion and MGTOW, and RPM you said, is that here's where a lot of the cucks and blue pill simps and feminists they get wrong. You remember that old saying, the pride before the fall? Okay, the pride comes from them going like this. Yeah, you know what we did, Phil? We got Jeff Bezos divorced, we got Bill Gates divorced, and now we got Dr. Dre. Look at all this money. Okay, that's one side of the coin. However, the flip side of that same coin is if you saw it, everyone else saw it. So any of those guys who may have been on the fence, especially, and this is the irony of Kevin Samuels, a lot of those high value guys see that and they're like, wait a minute, what if that becomes me? What if I'm making crazy money every year and all of a sudden she can just pull the rug out at any time? A lot of guys see that and they go, you know what? You know, Phil, that was my final straw. Like there are guys out there that may have been like teetering, right? Like just teetering. Sometimes all it takes is to see that, because now, I mean, you look at what happened to, I mean, look at within the last year, you got Aisha Curry talking about I want more attention from other men. You got Will Smith getting cucked on a global scale with the entanglements. And all of a sudden people go, you know, I think I'm done, Phil. RPM, I think I'm done.
Well, this is what RPM was talking about in his video. Said, like, any guy who's potentially thinking about marriage now, that Dre divorce has just killed any thought of that. Like, to any guy who's got any cognitive ability at all, must look at that and go, you know what? If that can happen to Dre, I'm done for. It's just not worth it.
Well, RPM, what do you think that did to the game, guys? Remember, there's all these guys, you need the whole masculine frame. And when you're a high value man to make all this money, dude, if money couldn't keep Mackenzie Bezos, money couldn't keep Melinda Gates, money couldn't keep Nicole Young, dude, most of these so-called high value men are really just successful simps when you really boil it down.
Yeah, I've been having my ears perked up for the game guys and the PUAs. Boy, they as quiet as church mice right now.
Quiet. Real quiet. and Phil, what do you think about that? The same guys who are always talking about you know, you got to do this again. Because here's the thing, all of the boxes they check, and like I said, I'm very fair with the things I say. I look at a guy like Kevin Samuels, give props where props are due. I give criticism where criticism is due. The fact that Kevin Samuels has been married and divorced twice, and he himself is not married currently, right? Yet he's in same with Fresh and Fit. They're talking all this stuff about, yeah, but you should still date. Hold on now. You guys aren't dating, right? You're not dating, you're not married, but yet you claim the other guy should still do it, even though they just need to learn human nature, learn this game, and sign up for this course. But for what purpose? Right?
You know, that's kind of ironic. You would think that I would be over on that side and they would be over where I am.
Yeah, right?
Flip flop. I'm trying to keep dudes off the plantation.
Yeah, I just like the fact that there are guys out there who haven't figured that part out, right? Because Phil, Kevin, listen, I'm a huge Kevin Samuels fan. I like what he's done to the manosphere. I think he's brought a lot of, because he's global now. Like you say the name Kevin Samuels, he has over 1 million subscribers. People know who Kevin, like average Joes in the street know who Kevin Samuels is, right? Yet no one can answer that question. Okay, Kevin Samuels, you say that guys should be high value men. I agree with you. I agree. Where I differ from Kevin Samuels is it's the reason why they should. Because if you're saying you should be high value man to get all these women and have these options, but then you're going to commit, you're going to get married. He still preaches marriage, but he himself is not married. He's been divorced twice.
It kind of depends, though, because let's say Kevin Samuels had 50,000 subscribers. I'm a bit more inclined to actually believe that what he says online is actually what he believes. But when you've got like 1 million subscribers, he could be playing to the crowd. You don't know. I would need to take the guy out, say, for like a bite to eat and a couple of drinks and actually find out what he really means, or what he's the actions behind his words, to see if there's any difference, kind of idea. Now, assuming that he is like above board and everything he's saying online is true, I've just got to question them, because like if you've been married twice and you're not married now and you're still advocating that guys should get together with girls, I'll just like one word: why? I'm here all night. Just give me all of the reasons that you've got, because I think it's going to take a long time for you to actually come out with a reason which could get anywhere near convincing me.
Well, and the beauty of this is that RPM, have you noticed every dating coach is unmarried, male or female? How come none of them are married? You notice that?
I think there's one, and I know Coach Greg Adams kind of, throws jabs at him, but he never calls him out by name. But I actually took a look at him. His name is Steve the Dean Williams.
Yep, he's a simp.
And I think another one is Mr. Lucario.
Lucario, yep, simp. I know who these guys are. Black Manosphere guys.
Yeah, but when I look at him, I'm like, wait a minute. You guys are talking about, and I'm a married guy, and I'm like, wait a minute. The stuff that you guys are talking about is old game. So how are you guys, trying to repackage old tricks in a new era? That's like trying to bring a stick to take down a tank. You can't bring prehistoric solutions to modern problems.
Facts. Well, that's my beef. I think there was an issue in the manosphere. I want to say it was Steve the Dean. I think it was like Alpha Male Strategies, right? It kind of had some kind of verbal back and forth, something like that. But I'm like, here's the thing. Minister Jap talks about this a lot, right? He talks about the old comfortable Negro, right? Because there's a lot of old comfortable Negroes that are out here, and Phil, I'm sure you've seen this too. They're all, what RPM just said, they're preaching this old game, right? This old, dude, here's the thing. Everything that these guys are saying is accurate, right? If you came from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, from that era.
From that era. Like, dude, here's the thing. I have no issue with Steve the Dean or Mr. Lucario, all this stuff. I'm like, dude, and that's why if you notice, a lot of the young bucks who really know what's going on right here and now, they know that these hoes got burner phones and OnlyFans, and that's why they're looking at these guys side-eye like, and do you know who really got roasted, Phil? Was Moist Boyce Watkins. You guys need to be stepdaddies in the black community. Shut up. Don't say shit to me, boys. Because here's the thing. He comes from that old, comfortable Negro mindset, right? Like, he comes, it's the 90s. The 90s, factory produced simps in the black community, Phil. That's when R&B was at an all-time high. Do you remember the 90s? every ounce of music from the 90s in the black community was basically simp music, right?
Yep.
It was about being a simp. Like, boy, let's start naming them off, right? Boys to Men. I guess you say R. Kelly was, if anything, R. Kelly might have been the only real red pill because he was singing sex songs, not really love songs, right? He wasn't saying I want to get married. He was, peeing on bitches. He was doing whatever he was doing. Everybody else in the R&B sector was always like singing love songs, and it was so simpy, dude. The 90s was a bad era for R&B, man. It was just nothing but simp music.
It has been historically, though. I mean, even if you go back to like the time of Elvis, they're all talking about singing about relationships and stuff like that because it sold records and whatnot. When records were such a thing, we use this term. I don't think kids actually know what a record actually is.
Of course. Well, even if you guys remember, there was a show on VH1 called Behind the Music, and it was a great show. And one of the things that you learn is that you kind of learn the nature of the business and the marketing, because I remember there was a Guns N' Roses Behind the Music, and they had a great one. And Axl Rose, I remember it might have been Slash was on there, and he talks about how the nature of being a big rock band, once you hit a certain level of success, you have to appeal to women. Well, guess what you have to do in order to appeal to women? You have to sing love songs, ballads, right? So you hit them with the hardcore rock track, but that had to be the B-side. You needed the ballad, like November Rain, to bring all those women in, right? Now, what do when you bring the women in? The guys are going to feel kind of, jilted, right? Like, the hell, you're singing love songs? But that's when you have to hit them with that ballad, like Right Next Door, or I'm going to say a hardcore banger, like Right Next Door to Hell, right? And that was to counterbalance. So that way the ladies had what they wanted, the guys got what they wanted. And that's why, if you notice, during that era, a lot of guys learned, especially bands back then, learned that dynamic. They do. You got to have the ballads for the ladies and the grungy, hardcore, kind of rough and tumble songs for the guys. And that's why, if you notice, go back to those concerts back then, Phil, it was mixed company, right? Guys were in the crowd, girls were in the crowd. It sold records.
Well, like I can remember an era, and I'm going back to like the early 80s, where if you went to like, say, a hard rock concert, it was like 95% men. And I watched the transformation over time with, say the likes of Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. And then you got this 50-50 mixed crowd, and it just wasn't the same. It's when I said, it's not like going to a concert anymore. This is different. I don't know what this is, but it's not what I'm used to.
What do you think the feeling, how did it feel to you? Describe the atmosphere of going to that 95-5 versus the 50-50.
It was, there was more, I suppose, when I think about more of a brethren thing, but it was just the guys going out and just enjoying everything for what it was. Whereas there's a bit more of it's that kind of ballady type of piece that they're actually going to play. And this is one for the women. You just kind of deal with it. You might be able to, back in those days, make out with a girl at the time because she's listening to love songs and she's all open and stuff. So like you could tolerate that sort of stuff. It wasn't what you were there for. But, you could make something good out of a bad thing. But it just became the norm over time, as you say, like with big mega bands and stuff, because early Eddies, you would go and see bands that were, if I put these in a YouTube perspective, these were bands that were like, it would have the equivalent of 50,000 subscribers. They had a following, but they weren't massive. But then when they turned into like the likes of U2, Guns N' Roses, all of a sudden everything changed. Mm-hmm. And then it's almost as though, like, imagine you're out with the guys, and there's a certain amount of banter, as we would say in the UK. There'll be a lot of bad language and stuff like that, but the humor is raw and it's really funny. You start introducing women into that, and all of a sudden men are moderating the language and things are said in a certain way. It's exactly the same thing with the concert.
Well, one of the things that it's funny you say that, Phil. I was talking to Team Sneed earlier about this, and we were addressing this because I said, look, man, if guys knew, if they're unapologetically who and what they are, they get the end result easier and better. So the irony is, by moderating yourself around women, right, they have less attraction to you. Phil, the amount of times I am called an asshole, a chauvinist, a misogynist. I'm talking daily.
I'm 100% behind you, and obviously I know this. But funny enough, harking back to what I'd said earlier, talking to my father, I remember, I forget what the conversation was about, irrelevant, but he said, I just have no time for men who use bad language around women, because he's from that era. It was just something that you didn't do. And that's why, I thinking this in my mind, I didn't verbalize this out loud, but to say, but that's why you're a simp, and that's why you always dance to the woman's tune rather than the other way around. And I think younger men these days, they're getting it more than my dad did. So hopefully we're slowly turning in the right direction and realigning masculinity to where it should be.
Yeah, RPM, I got a question for you. I talked to Sneed about this. We talked about this with Mr. Leximus's girlfriend's niece. And have you seen a split with younger people? I don't know how much access or time you have with them, but with the younger crowd, what I keep hearing is that there is a hard split. Girls have to choose between bitch-made simps, A, or B, straight up red pill teens, like actual TikTok dudes who are like, yo, I'll smash this chick, whatever. Like they have no feelings. Like, I don't know what you've heard about these girls' body counts, RPM. Some of these, like, these dudes, you think, Phil, back in the day, you had to put in some work to get girls, right? Like, you couldn't just walk up and be like, oh, yeah. Like, it is easier to get a blowjob than a French kiss today in 2021.
That was one of the things I was going to bring up. I can remember an era, and we're going sort of like late 80s to 90s, where getting a blowjob it wasn't a given. Whereas now, if a girl doesn't want to sleep with you, she'll say, I'll blow you off, but we're not going to sleep together. And she'll use that to just sort of like fend you off. Whereas it took a lot of work. There was fiery hoops to jump backwards through and stuff like that, backward flips and all the rest of it. Figuratively speaking, of course, to be able to get that sort of action. Whereas now, it's just like, as part of what I would say the OnlyFans generation, it's almost flipped back on itself and say, I'll do all the dirty shit before I actually sleep with you.
You know what it is? Okay, so what I've noticed is that the women are afraid to invest also. They talk about the guys. A lot of this is projection. The women are afraid to invest because they know that their ability to pair bond is shot, right? So in order to cope with that, they'll say, I don't want romance and intimacy. I'll do the dirty stuff, right? You can tie me up, spank me, bring me, invite your friends over, but no kissing. No kissing. That's intimate. You're like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. We got these guys. I see a bunch of tiles in my Discord. You'll slob up the whole team with sloppy toppy, but you won't kiss? Sure.
It's weird. I mean, like,
would you really want to kiss one of these modern day women?
Facts, though. Facts.
There is that, but maybe because I come from an older generation than the average listener here. But I've spent a little bit of time in Amsterdam. I don't mind like a little bit of a smoke every now and then, of course, then I'll go out whoring in the evening. And what restricts the whores that will allow themselves to go with me, I've always said, well, do you kiss? And as soon as they say no, I just walk on, type of thing. But maybe I'm from a different era. I wanted to be something somewhat intimate if I'm going to. Maybe I'm looking for the wrong sort of thing. But as you say, it seems to have flipped on its head with the modern woman. I'll suck you off and I'll do all sorts of anal action, but I'm not going to kiss you. And you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Bill, listen, I got some people coming on for the Thot Girl Summer Series. I've got some teenagers coming on, right? 18, 19. When I tell you these dudes got stories, Phil, about what these girls are doing, anyone out there who has hope, because, I have a goal. I have a goal to end all hope. I've told you, Phil, I don't want any young boy or young man out there to have even a shred of hope. I don't want them to say, but my unicorn. No. Zero. I want them to look out there and say,
now,
no.
How far are you actually wanting to take that? You want the end of days? Or is it because like a lot of MGTOW will talk about this and say, like, we shouldn't have any marriage or any interaction with women. And that's just to get women to actually see the reality for what it is and then realize, oh, I did something bad, so I'm going to correct my. Behavior. And then all of these so-called MGTOW that I talk to, they don't want to as soon as women correct their
Go back to
behavior
being
and the
simps.
laws are changed, they're going to go straight back to the plantation.
Yeah,
Whereas
see, I want to take
feel-
it further.
Go on and
I
tell me
want to
how
go
far you
further.
want to take it.
So I want the future until extinction to be man and machine, right? The artificial womb for birth and the sex doll for sex. And then like if you want, because I'll tell you where this is headed, and you're starting to see this already, Phil. In terms of relationships and RPM, you've addressed this. It's in the future. It's 2021. I'm not joking when I say this, guys. By 2031, all actual physical sex will be 100% transactional in the next 10 years. It'll be
Well,
totally
one
transactional.
could argue it's almost there already.
It's almost there now. Because here's the thing, Phil, if you aren't in that top, because they talk about the 80-10 or 80-20, I think it's gonna be closer to 90-10 or even 95-5 in the next decade, right? If you don't fit in that top, literally 5 to 10%, you're gonna get no action in the future unless you pay to play. So that being said, it's going to be totally transactional.
Are you phrasing that positively or negatively?
No, I don't phrase it positive or negative. I just go like this. It is what it is. Because remember, here's what ended up happening. We've taken all the pretense out of it, right? So back in the day, guys were courting, right? Guys courted, but Phil, here's the thing. And RPM has talked about this. The only difference between a quality woman and a non-quality woman is that the quality woman wants to prove herself worthy of your resources. The super hoe in Amsterdam in the glass house wants your resources just as bad as the traditional good girl, right? You invest more in the traditional good girl with house, kids. You're investing quite a bit, right? Monogamy, that's a huge commitment. Her end goal is exactly the same as the prostitute, resources. So what's going to happen is, and you're seeing this now with a lot of these guys. These guys aren't committing. What you guys have seen these videos, right? What are they say? What are the girls saying, Phil? RPM. Guys don't commit anymore. There's no chivalry anymore. So what's that telling you?
Because there is no need, to be fair.
What's the point? Listen, if I were to ask you, hey Phil, I bet you your dad was more of a gentleman, right? Like he was, you take a girl out, you open doors, you do that.
There was a protocol that he would follow.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that what I want guys to understand. Simping is not a bad thing, right? Because that's how everything you see today is due to simping, right? However, someone goes, well, Drex, you always talk about how you hate simps. I said, listen carefully. Simping isn't bad if the system does not punish simping, right? So what we have right now is we have a world that's topsy-turvy, and this is basically this is the world we live in a nutshell. And it punishes the best parts of male nature, right? Sacrifice, chivalry, hopeless romanticism. These are all male traits. Loyalty. Okay, so what does it do on this side? On this side, guys, it rewards the worst parts of female nature. That's why there's an imbalance. Open hypergamy, guys getting cucked, divorce raped, women's quest for...
Both of those hands are pushing in the same direction.
Correct.
Instead of pushing against one another and staying static.
Yep. And so that's why the world is the way the way it is. If guys, think about it, Phil, guys 100 years ago were simps, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But remember, there was no system to punish them for being a simp, right? Because think about it, what was a simp? Okay, he took the girl out, blah, blah, blah. He invests everything. He gave his all to that one woman. This is all simping.
But both he and she benefited from
this. They both benefited.
Simping.
Yeah, and the family and the society benefited. That's why it benefited, because he wasn't being punished for simping. Now, dudes are out here investing. Next thing they know, RPM, I was in an entanglement. Wait, what? RPM, I'm not happy. Wait, what?
And then next thing you know, you're in a dry divorce.
You're done, right? See, so because remember, women are fickle. Women being fickle is how they are. You can't be mad at that. So where the problem is that now you have a system that incentivizes and encourages women to be fickle. Hey, Phil, you're not happy, right? Hey, trade this man in and get a new man. It's time to level up, sis. See?
Yeah, in that instance, what we've done is we're taking a husband, but we're taking away the capacity for him to husband any resources he has for the family. So no authority, has all the responsibility. So hence the question, why would I do that?
Yep. And guys are checking out. And, RPM, I got a question for you and Phil. I'm sure both of you are fully aware that there's been a huge influx of women's videos that now women are allies to the manosphere. And I know you've seen these. RPM, I want your take on the chameleon surge.
Well, whenever I see a chameleon video, I typically leave a comment that says, go down, march on the family court. Until then, you ain't saying nothing.
Agreed. I mean, I see them, but perhaps I'm so cynical because I've looked in on the female attitude, female nature, and all the rest of it. I don't want anything to do with it. So my first thought is, so the environment got a little bit negative for you, and all of a sudden you want to change everything and get the man back. You burned that bridge behind you so far ago, it's not coming back. And it's women can't build things. They're just like they co-opt with that which men have built. So you need a man to build bridges. So you need him to want to come back. And I don't think they do. But that's just my opinion.
Phil, I think you're spot on. I talked to Team Sneed and I asked this question to him and he agreed with me. And I said, do you see that bridge being rekindled? And we both were like, yo, it's over. Like the gap between men and women, that bridge, it's so burned down that even the ashes have been scorched away. Like, so the ashes were there. It's like, we can at least use the ashes to create a little bed you can walk on. Those are gone. It's done. I'm saying, you don't know how done it is until you start talking to some of these younger guys. If you ever want to get some insight and go, I don't know, Drex, maybe there is some hope out there. Because remember, think about it, Phil, guys in our age group, for the most part, we aren't the ones that are going to get married. Look, I'm 38. A man approaching 40 who's already been in family court with the baby mama drama, right? A guy like me I've always been in the top percent of guys who just smash. You talk about it, Phil. You were just smashing. RPM in the Navy smashing. You just happened to choose to get married. At the end of the day, when all of us came to the same conclusion, if we came to the same conclusion and we're telling younger guys to make sure they stay away from what the ruin that these women are in the system are gonna heap upon them, you see it where these young guys are like, oh, these hoes are for the streets. Because if you guys think it's bad, you think it's bad with some of these post-wall chicks, Phil, I'm hearing from teenage guys, these chicks are OnlyFans.
That's what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
The fact that we've got TikTok. And I argue the point, I don't know if they are teens going their own way. Perhaps we need a different name for them. But the fact that they exist should be the writing on the wall for like any guy. And the women should be looking at that and say, oh, we fucked up so hard. Even the teens are going their own way.
Yeah.
But they still don't see it.
Well, Phil, here's the thing about the teens. And RPM, I want your take on this. Phil and I addressed this before where we said, one of the ways that you know there's a problem is that this is when boys are at their absolute horniest, right? Is when they go through puberty. These guys are horn dogs. What does it say that a guy hangs out with his buddies and plays video games rather than pursue girls his age when he's 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20? What that's telling you is he has overridden his own biology. And he's like, because Phil, we've talked about this. Guys never lose our eyesight, right? Like we look at women and we go like this, admire that. Yep, that looks great. And someone goes, hey Phil, would you like to smash? If that's what your desire was, you would say, yeah, sure. But when someone goes, hey Phil, what about dating? No desire.
I might be able to appreciate the majesty of the tiger, but I don't want to get within arm's reach of one. It's the same sort of idea with women. It's just too dangerous. Now, even if you change the laws, and this is where most of my opinion comes from, because they're just dangerous because of those laws, all she's got to do is point the finger and say j'accuse, then it's like life, career over, all of
Yep.
the rest of it. But even without that, even when you spend some time and get to know what female nature is like, it's like, Jesus Christ. The book of Genesis was actually right. It talks about, like, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and it's actually the female. Eve
Yep.
herself was the incarnation of the serpent, if you think about it, when you
Mhm.
read actually into that book. And those old guys were trying to tell us a tale, and we missed it.
We really missed the boat. And RPM, let me ask you this: when it comes to how we missed the boat, how do you feel that things have kind of come full circle? Because guys are getting their masculinity back. Some guys are getting whatever. But I think that the sense of apathy that has kind of seeped into a lot of the men, whether young or older. Do you know how you know guys are apathetic? Is that they're cheering for the trans community. Is that not the ultimate proof that guys have checked out?
I'm
Hey.
going to take it a step further. Guys are cheering for HMT.
Mhm.
That's
Oh,
when
God,
you know.
definitely.
Men, guys, they just outright don't give a shit anymore. Oh, Hope gets murked. Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh well. What did she do that ended up having the guy put the mask on? Oh, oops. Oh well. She should have kept the fucking mouth shut.
Yep.
When I first started doing this series, man, I got a lot of pushback. Man, how can you be so cruel? These women are getting murdered out here. Yeah, some years later, hey, she should have kept her fucking mouth shut, or she should have kept her legs closed. Oh well.
Oh well. It is what it is.
Maybe I'm cynical, but like, if some guy just went like mental on like a woman in the family and just wasted them for no reason, you'd say, all right, I have some sympathy. But there's always a bit of story behind the HMT episode, if you like. And I wouldn't necessarily say always she brought it on herself, but there are times where you've got to take some responsibility for the aftermath of something. And a woman, being a woman, will never take any responsibility for anything that happens. And it seems to be the job of the simp to just like say that, oh, it's never the woman's fault. Nothing warrants that. And it's like,
Nope.
I remember slightly prior to RPM's HMT line of things, or the episodes of HMT, and TFM talked about this. He said, this is going to get worse. And I remember telling like a lot of guys, like, you're going to start to see a lot more of men going full postal on women and women getting wasted. And then RPM started to do his whole line of HMT videos and said, look, I told you. And of course, you don't see this stuff in the mainstream media as such.
Nope.
It gets like suppressed, if you like, and they don't want it to get out. But it's getting so, like, even I sent an HMT story off to RPM, and it's just like, if I'm starting to notice it, like in the British media, it's got to be widespread.
Well, it's great that you said that, because one of the things that I noticed with I send RPM's HMT videos to guys. I have them listen. I'll tell you something that you may not know. RPM, I want your take on this. Have you noticed that there's a lot of married guys who enjoy listening to HMT?
That is interesting. I've not noticed that one.
I have.
So maybe you know.
Yeah. So you would think HMT would be like great stories for like single guys, right? Like, yeah, these bitches ain't shit, whatever. I'm not joking, man. Guys who are married, I'm not gonna say they're happily married. They're contently married, right? Because you're not gonna find to be happily married guys. They're content. They're like, it is what it is. I'm married. I'm in too deep. It is what it is. You know what I think it is? I think we truly have come full circle, because okay, let's be honest. There were a percentage of bad men back in the day who were doing women dirty, right? Who were legitimately scumbags, right? So do you guys notice? Okay, there was an overcorrection, right? Oh, he was drunk and abusive, blah, blah, blah. So women, that's why if you notice the hive, the sisterhood was cheering for the laws changing, right? They were totally misandric, right? And they were cheering for it. Even if they themselves weren't a part of it, it struck a chord hearing a man get destroyed by the family court. Yeah, you show that man. Now you're starting to see the tide shift. And because guys stopped caring, and that's why when you hear these stories about women getting beat down in subways and guys don't do anything, women like in RPM we talked about that, where you were like, and no white knights came. This is the first time women in modern history have seen guys stop caring. And so the reason why that's important is when guys stop caring, you go, so what do guys care about? Now you see the guys hearing HMT videos, Phil, whether married, and this is the big thing, even when they're married, they're like, yeah, because
I've noticed with the married guys, they do the whole Chris Rock thing. I'm not saying he should have done it, but I understand.
But I understand, right? And you know the question I have for a lot of these guys I hear who listen to that, and this is especially for my white audience, because you guys remember there's a big racial divide over the O.J. Simpson not guilty verdict back in, I believe that was 96, 95, 96. Here's my thing about that. When are we going to get to a point where, especially, and this, like I said, I'm really reaching out to the white guys right now, because those are the ones who are like oh, OJ is horrible, blah, blah, because there was a big racial divide. What happens when the white guys look back at OJ's situation and go, oh, if you believe he did it, you go, I see why he put on the mask. Because remember, Chris Rock during that whole stand-up, Phil, you remember, he goes, remember, Chris Rock actually explained HMT. He said, hold up, guys, for all you who are talking about OJ, he goes, let's put yourself in OJ's shoes. So you got divorced. She's making a mockery of you in the papers. Everyone's going after you. He was paying Nicole $5,000, I think it was $4,000 or $5,000 a month just for food. And that was in the 80s and 90s, right? If you were paying a woman that kind of money, that's like paying, by modern standards, that's about 15 grand. 5,000 in the early 90s is about 15,000 by modern standards. So imagine paying a woman 15 grand a month, Phil, just to eat. She has other men riding around in your cars, right? In the cars that you paid for. And what does RPM always say? A man can only take so much disrespect. So by that definition, I want more white guys like this. Man, OJ was an innovator, fam. Because Chris Rock had that stand-up where he talks about Nelson Mandela. He said, and I think, here's the thing, we always talk about this, right, RPM? The reason why comedy is funny is because there's a lot of truth to it, right? It hurts, but it's true. So Chris Rock during that stand-up talks about Nelson Mandela. He described Nelson Mandela's trials and tribulations, right? Phil, this man was sitting there in an African jail for 27 years, right? Yet all the things that Nelson Mandela went through, right? Torture, blah, blah, blah. He lost a big chunk of his life as a political prisoner. He couldn't take marriage, right? Remember that was his parting shot? He goes, and all that, and he said after, he wasn't even married that long, right? He was married, I don't think 6 months or 2 years? He goes, I can't take this shit no more. And that's when Chris Rock drops the mic. Let that sink in. A man can take 27 years in an African prison, but he couldn't take marriage to a woman. Let that sink in.
Yeah, a lot of his time was in solitary confinement as well.
Yeah. RPM, what do you think about that? You're a man who is currently married. What do you think about the nature of Chris Rock's joke that a man can take being imprisoned, right? But he can't take marriage. He would rather I can't take this.
Yeah, that joke hit home for a lot of married men. That because they know it's true. They know it's true. It's like, man, this is the worst thing ever. Oh, if I could kill this bitch and get away with it. But I must say, even out here in California, I'm starting to see a little bit of a shift, a minute one.
Oh, wow.
In some married guys, because now they're just starting to realize, you know what? Hey, you know what? Fuck it. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore. A lot of these guys are starting to not care. It's like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? You're gonna divorce me? Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I guess when you get so far, you say, well, if I'm fucked anyway, I might as well do it on my terms.
Yep. Well, RPM, I got a question for you. when it comes to California, and especially California, I don't know if you know this, Phil, but the law in California is once you are married to that woman for 10 years and you get divorced, you pay lifetime alimony. And this is a red pill that I want a lot of guys to really swallow. It is women who push the whole idea of love far more than men, right? They're always pushing it. However, something peculiar happens, especially in California. So women preach love, love, love. However, once they get divorced, watch this. Hey, RPM, I want you to give me a % chance that Nicole Young, Dr. Dre's now ex-wife, will remarry after she's getting 300 grand a month, knowing that the alimony stops the moment she marries again. What % do you give her that she's going to remarry?
Negative 1,000.
There it is. But I thought it was about love, right? Right, RPM? Isn't it all about love? Commitment? Companionship? Isn't that what it's all about? Oh, is it about the bag?
Those nice little buzzwords. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, you'll marry me for love. Yeah, bitch. Yeah, right. No.
It was always about the bag, man.
Yeah,
always.
Buzzwords to bag the jackpot. Now that she's got the jackpot, she doesn't need to use the buzzwords any longer.
Absolutely not. And this is the thing. I want someone to do some kind of investigation and look at the amount of times a woman who has divorced, and let's just say she gets a fairly substantial alimony, right? Especially lifetime when it comes to California. How many times does she remarry? Because now here's what's going to happen. She's going to play the role of the man. This is the reason why I tell guys, I'm not so sure I buy into this whole, women are so emotional. It's the dude. The dudes are the hopeless romantics because let's face it, Phil, when women get divorced and they're getting 300 grand a month, and the terms of alimony states, if either party dies, alimony stops, or if the party who's collecting alimony remarries, alimony stops, right? All of a sudden, women don't want to get married. And they're like, and do you know what they start saying? They say the same things that single bachelors say, right? I mean, hey, we could be companions and we could be cool, but no cohabitation, no marriage. And you go, wait a minute, how did you become anti-marriage when before you were all about marriage? Marriage does not define our love, Phil. You can love someone wholly and not be married. So they're saying the same thing dudes say because the bag is at stake.
But again, the women speak with forked tongue. It's though they can't say anything directly, so they've got to speak indirectly to you. So the lies just carry on coming out.
Absolutely. And you know what, though? I appreciate the lies, to be honest with you. And this is the reason why I appreciate it. Every time they come out here and start lying about whatever they choose to lie about, somewhere out there is a guy who knows the truth. And you guys have seen I don't know if you've seen the TikTok video, Phil, but I'm sure you have, RPM. Girls posting their L's as a group. So Phil, here's the scenario. 10 girls, right? Each one runs up to the camera and says their L. Like one girl said, I had sex with the whole football team and they ghosted me afterwards. And the girls go, yeah. And they start clapping. And then the next girl walks up in front of the camera. RPM, have you ever seen any of these videos? They're on TikTok.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. And so the girls as a collective post their L's by being individualistic and just cheering the sisterhood on by being like, there was a girl who said something like, the standard for men, the bar for men is so low that when a guy buys me Plan B, I think of him as a gentleman. Yeah, clap, clap, clap. It's like, bruh. You get to a point, Phil, where you kind of look, you're like, no change is going to come from that side. You know that. There's going to be no change from that side.
This is why I hark back to the book of Genesis and say the serpent actually was Eve. And people just think I'm being hugely cynical, but like women have got like no soul, no love in their heart or anything like that.
Nope. No, even when they're young, like, the last time you saw a girl that liked a guy because she actually liked him is before hypergamy can really kick in. Think about it. If a girl liked you when you were 14, she didn't gain anything from liking you, right? She didn't gain anything. So if you could make an argument that was the only time it could ever be genuine, right? Is right at puberty. That's the only time it's genuine because Once they've been ran through and all blah, 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 they've had their heart broken and crushed into a million pieces from getting ran through. At that point, you're at a point where, all they can really do is just use words, right? Oh, Phil, I really do love you and I want us to be X, Y, Z. But hold on, I'm looking at your actions. And, RP, we talk about this all the time. Look at their actions, don't listen to their words, right? What do their actions tell you? Her actions tell you that she doesn't want to commit. Because most of these women have cheated on every single guy. You've seen the article, Phil. Most women have a backup man, right?
Well, I would say all women. You would have to be severely disabled to not actually have one.
Yeah, well, you guys have seen this, right? How many times have you guys seen a girl break up? Maybe it was you. A girl broke up. She broke up with you on January 1st. How is she posting that she's in a new relationship January 8th? You're like, wait a minute. But where'd this guy come from? Dude, Phil, not she took a picture with just some guy, right? No. They are in an actual full relationship. She monkey branch. Once guys, guys aren't usually the ones monkey branch because most guys like this. She's my girl. Even if they're cheating on her, that's still their girl because the cheating is usually just physical. Very rarely do you see guys monkey branch and just literally go from one chick to another in a full-on relationship. Because usually, think about it, Phil. What is the side chick getting? The side chick is getting sex, right? So he's not gonna leave a relationship to go to. He's like, as long as I'm getting the sex, I'm good. That's enough for me. Oh, it's bad out here, man. Oh, it's gotten bad. But I do want to get you guys' take on something TFM said years ago. He said, it's bad when men make better women than women. I'm assuming you have heard, Phil, about Miss Nevada being a trans. RPM, I know you have. What is your take on that? Oh, and Sports Illustrated is a trans woman also. Lena Bloom, I think was the name I saw. Give me your take on that. That you're having trans women push women out of their own game.
The same as the quote unquote trans woman that went to the spot. Women voted for him. Women voted for this. Let them have it. They got what they wanted. Now they're complaining about what they got. Oh, well, you wanted it, ladies. I got no problem with it.
I saw this a lot earlier. Being an older guy, I can remember the sort of glam rock of the 80s. And there were a number of bands at the time that were doing like makeup and long hair and all that sort of shit. And there were some of them you were looking and go, what, that's a dude? Really? Fucking hell, that's incredible. It's exciting kind of thing, because they were more attractive than some of the best looking women. So it of no surprise to me, like in the noughties, where these trans like women kind of came along and can oust women from their own game. But at the same time, women are chasing the masculine side of the coin and trying to be big, butch, and strong, and like no emotion, all the rest of it. And surprise, surprise, men aren't interested in that. So like the men themselves have created their own instance of what the feminine woman used to be at one time. So it doesn't surprise me at all.
Now, I'll tell you what my take is on this. I agree with both of you guys 1,000%. I think there's a great nuance to this that doesn't get discussed enough. They talk about equality, blah, 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 blah. No one cares, right? Now, here's where my mind smiles big. So women are based primarily on their beauty, right? Beauty is the number one thing. That's why women spend trillions a year on cosmetics and beauty. Men don't. So now think about this for a second, guys. A man can be a better woman than a woman based on what we value them most for, which is beauty. The opposite is not true and cannot be true. A trans man, which is a male, a female to male transgender, transsexual, I should say, cannot and will not beat a man in what we're best for. So to put this in perspective, a man who's a trans woman winning a beauty pageant would be the equivalent, Phil, RPM, everybody. That is the equivalent of a female to male winning bodybuilding competitions, right? Lifting competitions. Like, oh, look at me, I'm the strongest. All I did was just transition into a man, and now I'm winning. I'm the strongest man on earth because it can't happen, right? As CFM says, testosterone is the hormone of the gods, right? So here you have all these women, and you guys have heard those articles. When women transition to men, they realize how hard life is, right? They're like, wait a minute, what happened? The difficulties spike.
I now have to do stuff. People
I
aren't
do
doing
stuff.
shit for me.
Yeah. No one does anything for me, right? And I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing it. I enjoy hearing these little tears of there are little things that start to happen, right? Like RPM. If a girl's on a bench crying, people, strangers, will walk up and ask her what's wrong. No one cares if a man cries. No one cares if a man yeets himself. No one cares if a man is homeless. No one cares about you ever. Ever. But if you're a girl, dude, there's endless resources for it. And you know what, Phil? I think that's one of the reasons why women can Me Too you so easily, because they have multiple revenue streams. So they're like, who cares if he loses his job? Because if they lose their job, they have an army of simps, mom, dad, they have everybody to pick up the slack, right? The government. Men don't. That's why when someone says, hey, do you want to go ahead and come to HR, Phil, and get rid of this guy's job? Men have a huge problem with saying or doing something to get rid of someone's job. Even if I hate Dollhouse Phil, I hate that guy. I can't stand him. I hope he burns in the fire. All right, do you want to get him fired? Yeah, I'm not okay with that. Men just have an issue with getting a guy fired. Like, I don't like that.
Because we understand what being truly destitute actually means. I noticed this. I had to go to some courses on like how to start a business when I was starting the Dollhouse. All these women who had all of these airy-fairy business ideas that they were starting up, and all of them had one thing in common. They had a man who was actually earning a wage and was paying for everything in the background, whereas the guys who were starting a business, they were starting with absolutely nothing, and they had to make that work. So they were thinking a lot deeper on how to actually make this thing work, because otherwise they were on the street. Then therein lies the difference between men and women.
Well, you know who's a prime example of that? Did you guys heard about Robert De Niro's German Shepherd of a wife spending up all of his money, right?
Yep.
In bogus businesses. Because here's the thing. It's not just women. It's because there are males, I'm not going to say men, there are males who have this mentality, and they are the ones who leech off of women and family members, whether they be drug addicts, deadbeats. What it is a person who doesn't go out there and grind every day doesn't understand and appreciate the grind, right? Therefore, that's why, if you notice, look at the welfare system. The reason why these people, that's you. I better go to the ER. Wait, because you sneezed? The reason why they went to the ER because they sneezed, because they aren't paying for anything, right? Whereas we are looking like, yo, man, that's how our health premiums went up, because so many people are sitting here collecting. That's why your premiums went up. Dude, there was a time, Phil, I've talked to people from the old school. They were like, yo, man, through my company, all I had to do was pay the copay of $25. That was it. I'm like, let me get this straight. You could go to the hospital for anything. 25, that was it. So someone goes, what happened? Well, when you have all these people getting assistance and going to the hospital every sneeze, you drive the cost up, and that's what you start getting hyperinflation through the medical profession. And what ends up happening? Surprise, Phil. Now a doctor's visit. What's the cheapest doctor's visit you guys have had?
Well, we have the NHS in the UK, so it doesn't cost. Now, however, there's a tell behind that as well, because it doesn't cost us anything, but it comes out of the public purse. But I have noticed it was late 80s, 90s. There was an uptick in stories. I think this always happened, but it was becoming a problem, so people were talking about it. Nice old woman, she's about 80 years old. I'm going to go to the doctor. Oh, is there something wrong with you? No, I just like to talk. He's a nice young man, that guy. Because, again, it costs nothing. Then what happens? No one can get an appointment with the doctor for about 3 weeks, because all the old women are just going to have a nice conversation with the nice doctor. And it's just wasting public money. So I would have changed that and said, look, pay £20 or whatever the hell the nominal fee would be to actually get your appointment, then all of these old women will go away and do what they should have been doing in the first place, going to age concern or meeting up with their friends and actually just having a conversation there. But they went to the doctor to just have a conversation. That's all they were doing because someone else was paying for it.
They have to get their attention.
Well, it's somebody else's money. That's the problem.
It's someone else's money. Because here's the thing, they aren't responsible for it. You or I would, dude. When's the last time you heard a guy say, "I'm just going to talk to a guy just because"? I just want to, just bring on someone and call. Hey, RPM, ring. How you doing?
If that ever happened, I think the guy was gay. But
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, dude, because it's unnatural. We always have something to do when we talk. Like me calling guys out of the blue, just be like, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, no, nothing. What's up?" "No, nothing. Just see how you're doing." A guy's he'll pull the phone with this is how a guy would look if he heard that. "Hey, what's up?" "Yeah, what's up? What's happening, man?" "Yeah, so what'd you call for?" "I just wanted to see how you were doing." "All right. Yeah, you doing okay?" The guy will literally pull the phone away like, "Wait, what?" Like, dude, you called me for no, because we view that as you call for no reason.
Vibe there, aren't you?
It's a gay vibe. We're like, wait a minute. What do you mean you're checking on like just to see how I'm feeling? Phil, it's so unnatural. A guy would be like, wait, so let me get this straight. You didn't call me to ask about doing something, right? Like, yo, you guys want to go out and do this? You want to do that? You just called just to say, hey, how you doing? Okay. Like,
texted me that.
Yeah. You could have texted that. Like, yeah, you could have just texted me a what's up. But you know, Phil, we've talked in our live chats about just like the changing social norms. You know, Ken Jennings ended up getting the whole cancellation with all of the nonsense going on.
You know, he's in the house, right?
Yeah, I see him over there. And one of the things that I find very disturbing is that we have reached that point in communism where wrong think is officially here. It's officially here. Wrong think, wrong speak is officially here. What is your take on that, Phil, and RPM?
Well, big tech's getting involved now, aren't they? They actually want to start censoring like your text messages and stuff like that. They're already making movements to do that. And the fact that there hasn't been a 100% societal response to say, no, they're my messages, they belong to me, or to whom I give them. The fact there hasn't been a 100% reaction against that of just outrage speaks volumes about modern day society, because there must be people out there who think, oh, well, that must be okay. And that's just the death of free speech and freedom as we know it. But that's just my opinion.
Boy, I tell you. I must say, if people still think we're living in a free world, they really need to wake the hell up.
Oh, that's been gone.
I mean, seriously, man, the way that big tech is, I mean, Joe Biden is talking about censoring. It's like, come on now. This is just ridiculous. But once again, as I say, people, they wanted this. They voted for this. They made a deal with the devil, and they did not read the fine print.
Absolutely.
So they better get ready to get bent over that barrel.
Oh, well, you know, it's funny you say that, because when you tell people this is what you wanted, you guys ever notice kind of how people react to that? Like, no, but I wanted that. That's why there's always that old saying, this isn't real communism. That's the reason why, you know, like when it comes to communism, socialism, that's why they always say that, Phil, because all of that requires you to do what? To be introspective, right? To have accountability. So if you vote for a bunch of policies that destroy everything, and then someone asks you, hey man, this is what you voted for, right? Like look at these women going into obviously the law change and stuff, and the proposal about women going to the draft, right? If you ask women about equality, like, yeah, this is literally exactly what you said. They truly believe that they can pick their equality a la carte, like Bill Burr said, right? Just pick and choose what is equality. And then when they see, like, no, this is like, so the next time they mouth off to a dude or threaten a guy and he punches them in the face, You should be like this. This is a win for feminism, right? This is what you wanted. Look, you can hit him if he threatens you, and he can hit you. They're like, yeah, I thought I could be not touched ever.
Well, yeah, this is what happened like with the trans community. Now that the women are being forced out of their own space, it's like, well, this is what you wanted. You voted
That's what
for
you
this.
want. I love the trans community, man.
Well, guys, I got to jump off, get ready for tomorrow's episode of HMT.
Ooh,
So,
courtesy of Dollhouse Phil. I'm gonna definitely listen to you. Yeah, go ahead and get yourself rested up and upload that, and I will definitely be the guy looking and clicking on that and commenting.
all right, gentlemen. So until next time, I'm out.
Stay
Peace.
good.
Yeah, so Phil, with his HMT series, when it comes to on a societal level, do you think that there's an HMT that kind of goes on a subconscious level where guys, it's almost like they're yeeting, whether it be like themselves or even the social circle in their life. Like it's like, because you see this cutoff, right? Like you're starting to hear more, like in Japan, I think they're called the hokimori, the guys who just sit inside the room. In a sense, that is HMT, right? On a social level.
Like a non-violent version.
Yeah. Rather than physically doing it, they're like this. You know what? I'm gonna yeet my job prospects. I'm gonna yeet my dating prospects. I'm gonna yeet my family ties. Like they literally just sit there and go, yeah, this is just gonna be me. I'm gonna literally disconnect from the world at large. It's and you think it is HMT to an extent, just on a social level.
I don't know if they see it as that. I mean, I can see it from your perspective in the same way. It's a shame that we can't get one of these guys to undisconnect from society, to just come and like have an interview or something like that, to just see how close they are to the MGTOW and like the Western way of doing it. Because I think we are a bit more visceral in the way that we want to disconnect from society, to kind of like, as we were just saying, this is what you voted for, women. You said men are like pigs and all the rest of it, and you want to like, I don't need no man. And then you start bitching about not having no man and all the rest of it. So like, you got what you wanted and you're still not happy, so we should just not listen to you. It'd be interesting to see if the Japanese guys actually feel the same way, or they just, no, I just don't care. Because I think they're a little bit ahead of us. I've been saying within the MGTOW community, all these guys who bitch on about the laws and stuff like that, and if they changed, they would probably go back to the plantation if it was safe to do so. I'm like, well, I've looked in on the whole female soul and I don't like what I see, so I'm never going back, no matter what laws may change. So I think I'm a bit more akin with the Japanese guys, where it's just a case of women can do whatever they want, I just don't care, I'm out, kind of thing. Whereas like I think a lot of MGTOWs are still harking back to the plantation if they could just get there safely. And I think the Japanese guys might be a bit more like me in that respect. They're just like, no, out, never coming back. I don't even want to know the directions back to the plantation. That's how I feel that the Japanese guys are going. I don't know if it's healthy the way they've gone, because they seem to go full disconnect and just like live in one room kind of thing. I don't know if that's great, but because Japan, as we know it from like World War II onwards, is dying. They're even opening up the floodgates to say we're going to allow foreigners in to do some of the work that we need to be done, which they were never going to do because they're massive xenophobes.
Yeah.
So that might just be the era of Japan over, and it might be Japan version 2.0 going forward. I don't know.
Well, I got a question for you on that, because I think Japan is a fascinating case study. I hear it from all sides. I hear Black people saying that we need an ethno state. White guys, we need an ethno state. Well, Japan is an ethno state. Dude, ethno state is not the solution to your problem. Feminism is the core issue, right? It's one of the core issues in gynocentrism. So I'll ask you this question, Phil. You talked about the Japanese men and what they're doing. What do you think about the desperation from the government to get in new people, right? New people, new workers, new baby makers, right? New baby makers. Let me ask you this: how do you see it playing out? Because these women, you think these women are just going to suddenly look at it? Because for the most part, they're just getting neighboring Asian countries.
The best I think they can hope for at the minute would be to attract all of the weebs to Japan because they're
Uh-huh.
already into the Japanese culture, and therefore, from an ethnic perspective, you might be diluting the gene pool, but all culturally would be the same. But I don't see it panning out like that because people will move for economic reasons to Japan, and then you start altering the culture, and that's why I say like Japan 1.0 is over. We're just waiting for the old people to die off because they're an aging nation as well. The average
I
age
agree
is like
completely.
pushing up in the late 60s now.
Yeah. Here's my issue with Japan. Is I should have asked RPM this question while he was here, but it's like I just get this sense that once you unlock female nature in terms of hypergamy, I don't think you could put that. I think once the genie's out of the bottle, that's it. So okay, if these women are saying the guy has to be 6 foot tall, what does it matter if you open the floodgates and have new guys? Because Phil, you know how guys are. If women's standard is 6 foot tall with a strong jawline, right? What happens when a guy who fits that description moves into Japan? The Japanese government says like, oh yeah. At least the bare minimum, we can get these people to have babies. You and I both know how this works, though, Phil. If a guy is every woman's type, he won't commit.
There is that, but with women's bar standard, if you like, I think it's relative. So let's say 6'4" is the top 5% of men, something like that, and they say that, and you get this influx of new men from other parts of the world. They say, oh, right now the top 5% is now 6'8", so that's what I want. And I think they just keep on moving the bar upwards, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So the answer then, dare I say, to sound like TFM, is either take women's rights away, or you're going to have to start getting men to enforce masculine levels of responsibility on women, which is much less likely to happen.
Now, Phil, I had a comment. I brought this issue up to my subscribers in the live chat, and I want your take on this. Okay, we all acknowledge that women aren't going to change and they can't change due to the laws, right? You have no authority over them. But what we do have is total control and say and sway over the behaviors of fellow man. And I believe that one of the solutions to all these problems is that there needs to be hard rules again. Just like women have the sisterhood, there needs to be a brotherhood. There is no more marriage anymore. Marriage kicks you out of the brotherhood. So once you sign that contract, once you start doing, okay, if you're a simp, you're done. If you get married, you're done. If you start, doing any male feminist talk, you're done. And it needs to be a point where, we talk about gatekeepers, because let's face it, Phil, is that not what feminists do? Feminists say, you can be whatever you want, right? Yeah, girl, whatever you want to be, we're here for you. Yeah, you have the choice. But as soon as they don't do what they want them to do, they bully them into being miserable career women. What stops us from bullying men? But here's the thing. Our goal is not to make them miserable. It's to save them basically save them from themselves. What is your take on more men holding men accountable by saying, yo, man, if you go the simp path, right? If you start giving money to girls on OnlyFans, I have to unfriend you. Like that will now cost you our friendship.
It's going to require the men coming together as a brethren kind of idea. And we just used to do this naturally, like up until about, I think, the 70s kind of idea, and then it all started to kind of dispel. So whatever it is that's preventing us, we should maybe want to take that away. And I've been suggesting to younger men as well, so look, you're all crying out for brethren, where you've got like older, more experienced men who can bestow like experience down upon you. It's waiting for new members, called the Masons, and I get just a look of fear from a lot of young men. I mean, it's starting to get a bit of traction and stuff, but there's a basic reticence amongst younger men these days to be part of something that is brethren-esque, whereas we'll cheer for women to have a sisterhood.
Agreed. Well, here's the thing. I think because a lot of that is because guys just didn't care, right? Like one of the reasons why guys didn't mind women having a sisterhood is that that's just the way, even when you watch the behavior of young boys, they just don't care, right? Phil, I have a daughter, and I'll tell you this, even at a very young age, you see female nature like up close and personal. She has to know where you are and what you're doing. They're literally inherently like that. Like I didn't teach her that, right? She would have to know where I am. Like she'll at some point, that's the nature of the female insecurity, right? So my daughter at some point will go like, wait a minute, I haven't heard from Dad. Because if I see that she's occupied, right? Let's say she's watching a show or something. I'm like, I'm not gonna bother her. I'll let her sit down and watch her little show. And I'll go somewhere else in the house and go do something. She then will go, oh, wait a minute, where is he and what is he doing? And I'm like, but weren't you perfectly content doing what you were doing? And then she has to now invade my space, right? If I'm watching a movie, suddenly she wants to be doing what I'm doing, not doing what she was doing. So I think that's why we always kind of had the female space. We didn't really budge in. It's because we didn't care.
Back in the day, we did stuff that women weren't that interested in. So for all that they might want to be on the outskirts or like know where we were, they didn't want to get involved in stuff like football and stuff like that. Or if you're talking the English game, soccer. Whereas now there's such a thing as the soccer mom, right?
Yep.
That never really used to be a thing back in the day. And it's like women just want to be around. I don't know if it's their inadequacy, because they will see men, like, say, sport as an example. We can just watch a game and be happy. Women just can't do that. I think it infuriates them that men can just be happy with simple things. So I think this is part of the whole jealousy of like the whole masculine frame, that I want to be able to do this. I just want to be able to be happy with simple things, and they can't do it.
Agreed.
So maybe this is why they all want to be up in our faces and in our space and do our thing, rather than just doing their own thing and be happy with that. Because like, we aren't happy shopping for clothes.
Nope.
Whereas they can do that for hours all day long and just enjoy the process and not actually come home with anything. Whereas we want to go into a store, buy the thing, and get out.
Yep. It's goal oriented. Their goals are different from what ours are. Theirs is the dopamine hit, right? Of social credit from think about it. That's why they can go on Instagram or whatever, Snapchat, and start posting pictures of them trying on different dresses and don't I look cute in this, just to get that social credit and validation and attention. Whereas guys, we're just like this. Oh, everything is utilitarian. Hey, Phil, I need that shirt for this business meeting. I need those shoes for this purpose. And we go in, buy it, and leave. Although someone did ask a question here. I want to make sure I actually got that. Shaftesbury asked, how and I guess why did you become a Mason anyways? My old teacher was one, but that's all I know. So yeah, he's curious, how did you become a Mason?
Funnily enough, one of the MGTOW guys that I know in real life, he had been a Mason because he used to be in the army. And he just said it was just one of those things I was asked, and he just said it was fun to do. Like you meet new guys, you do like a little bit of charitable work and stuff like that. So you're kind of useful in that respect. And it struck a chord with me because as a single guy who like I make a decent living, stuff like that, I could be thought of to be something of as a drain on society because I'm not contributing with children or anything like that. So I thought, well, if I'm doing charitable work at the same time, and I know a few more guys to like have a beer with or something like that, everybody wins. So I just thought that it's going to be useful in that respect. And if I don't like it, I can always leave. And I haven't yet. So I would just say you can meet an awful lot of very well-connected people through the Masons. Like if you've got a problem and you tell one of your brothers in the lodge, so I can't help you, but I know a guy who knows a guy who can help you out. And this is what men should be like naturally, but we need like a construct such as the Freemasons to network that way, which is, I think the MGTOW should be like this anyway. We should always know a guy. Like, let's just say, Drex, you need an electrical job done. We should know a MGTOW guy who can do it and keep the money in the family, so to speak. That's the
I've said that in the past. Phil, I remember we talked about that. The evolution of MGTOW, evolution of the red pill, and I talked to TFM about that, and he said one of the biggest problems, the hurdles, is this obsession with anonymity. Right? There's a flat-out obsession. I can show my face because I'm always like this. This is just who I am. This is not, it's not an act. But I know there's a lot of guys out there that, you saw what happened to Ken Jennings, where it's like, there's so many risk factors involved with, having your face out there, having your likeness out there. But I want men to somehow figure out a way to evolve beyond that so that, like you said, if your car breaks down, like you said, I know a guy who knows a guy. whatever the case may be, like there should, like I said, it should be kept in the family, and it becomes its own network. That I do believe that at some point it is getting infiltrated. I know how it gets infiltrated. You and I both know, Phil, it's going to be a female. It's going to be a female because they're going to simp. Like, dude, most of these guys, Phil, we talked about this. They aren't really MGTOW, right? They're really just waiting for something to change so they can go back on the plantation.
There's a question just came in through the chat. As I'm a Mason, does that mean that I believe in a supreme being? That's pretty much the one thing that you'll be asked as a requirement to potentially be a Mason. Do you believe in a supreme being? Now, they don't say God, because otherwise that's going to hark to what's like Judaism or Christianism. So you can believe in, like Buddha, Allah, God, whatever that you want. Now, there's a guy in London who's a Mason, and he believes in physics to be the supreme being, and he hasn't been kicked out. So, you can still technically be atheist, but believe that there's something greater than yourself, whether that's just the laws of physics or nature or whatever, and that's okay. This isn't a restrictive kind of requirement of the Freemasons, just so that everyone knows.
I agree. And someone says teacher was Air Force. One of the things that I find to be very, very unique out here, Phil, is guys understand what the guys are going to, and I want your take on this. They understand what guys are going through, yet it's like there's this resistance to actually help another brother. What do you think about that?
It's destructive in nature, because we need to come together. Like, we as men, we formed the first human network. It wasn't women that did this. They formed cliques and they war against one another. Whereas men, when they come together, like say you and I, we work together and we dislike each other. We can dislike each other and work together. Women can't do that.
Agreed.
They have to destroy the other person, get them out of the network. So that they can't overcome problems. So men have naturally done this. Why we're not doing it just seems to be like a modern thing, and we need to get past this. Which is why I would say something like the Freemasons is a good introduction into networking, because one of the things we're not allowed to do in the lodge is talk religion or politics, because it's so divisive. And just like little basic rules like that, just kind of give you the, I suppose, knowledge and experience to know what not to do in society. Because with a vastly open and large network such as the Masons, you're going to get people who don't get on, but they know how to coexist, and there's a big difference. Whereas women will just never do that, and we should be doing that now, because like unified, we're like a strong network in the Masons. Again, it's like you might not know how to solve a situation, but we know a guy who can do that for you. And it's a great honor within Freemasonry to be able to help another brother out. And this is how we just naturally used to be. And it's gone these days. I don't know if it's like from the 60s onwards or whatever, but like we're disparate these days rather than unified.
Do you believe that a lot of that comes from the fact that dudes have been raised by single moms, they've been feminized? So like they're basically exhibiting the feminine traits. So one of the feminine traits is not being able to overcome, because when I look at let's say like the Black community, right? And because so many Black youth are raised by single moms, they have those feminine traits. Like if you and I don't agree on everything, Phil, that means we have to be enemies. Have to be. And it's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
And there's no real way around it, right? Like, you've been around these guys, right? Like you can't really get around it. They dig their heels in, and that's that.
I've noticed this with politics recently. So I come from an era where, you might be left, you might be right, and never the twain shall meet and all of that sort of stuff. But you could get into like a heated debate with a guy in the 80s and then go, all right, so we're going to agree to disagree, whatever. But right, okay, it's time for dinner now. Shall we sit down around a table and actually have some food and then get on? Whereas these days, if you disagree on politics, all of a sudden you're like mortal enemies kind of thing. I don't know where that one's come from, but it's really rearing its ugly head now.
I've seen the split just, we talked about that with Sneed, where it's become so pronounced now that like one of the funniest places I think you'll see this is in dating profiles. You'll see a lot of guys who, like, better bachelor will post a dating profile. Phil, these girls will tell you if you're, this political, which is usually if you're against the right, but sometimes it's the left. When you see people saying, if you vote for this person, we're not compatible, and yet the great irony is that means by default, everyone that you have matched with that does agree with you, those relationships don't work, right? There's a cognitive dissonance there.
It's like you're looking for a problem rather than
Yep.
a solution, that kind of idea. And I wonder if that's a masculine versus feminine thing as well. Women look for problems, whereas men look for solutions.
They really do look for problems because, Phil, how many times have you been in a situation where there's a relationship, everything was going well, and out of nowhere, she just started sabotaging?
That would be every relationship to date. It's given enough time.
Yeah.
It's all almost, well, I suppose it's like, if they start to get bored, oh, I don't know what to do, so I'll just start shit testing the guy.
What do you think about like for the guys out there who are dating? What do you think about the guys who they need to learn how to shit test women?
I mean, do you sort of consciously need to do that, or because I tend to find it works a lot better if you just don't give a shit. And I don't mean be a dick about it or anything like that, but it's just, look, if this relationship goes sour, then fine, I don't care. And everything just seems to like find its own level and just like its own momentum and carries on under its own steam.
I definitely agree with that. And one of the things that I find funny is that, there are guys out there who are in that situation, right? And, Fresh and Fit talks about this quite often where, and also Strong Successful Male, where he goes, you wouldn't believe how many of my subscribers are in relationships. And Phil, what do you think about just the fact that so many guys, whether they're in relationships or not, the red pill content saw a boom during the pandemic? Like, what do you think about that? Especially guys who are already in relationships.
Maybe I'm a bit cynical on that one, but like, if you can't go out and you can't meet new people, are they looking for an excuse at this point? So like, I'm going to hide behind the red pill and say, I just believed in this anyway, just because I can't meet people. I mean, it's from that respect for me. I mean, it was home from home. It just meant I'm less likely to bump into women who might actually try and get romantically involved with me. So it's been a boon for me, I must admit. But for guys, if they're starting to say, oh, all of a sudden because of the pandemic, because I can't meet women, therefore I'm now going to be red pilled. I question so many young men these days when they start to come out with red pill rhetoric. It's like, do you really believe in that, or are you just saying that because it's easy?
What age do you think is the appropriate age for guys to kind of come into the fold?
If they're in the early 20s, I question them hard. Whereas late 20s, they've probably had like a serious relationship or two, and they can actually start to comment correctly and make the right noises on like female nature and stuff like that. But as the average age for losing virginity is like soaring upwards for guys, it might be in as much as the early 30s now.
See that? Well, Fresh and Fit talks about this where, most men are invisible to women. And how do you see that divide really pushing out in the future, right? Like, let's say in the next 10 years, where do you see that part coming from? From the female perspective, like, these guys are invisible.
Well, I hark that back to the idea of like, once you get beyond high school, all of a sudden you're competing with guys who've been like working for like 8 to 10 years for the same woman's affections. And that just seems to be getting worse and worse because now is this symptomatic of the fact that a lot of younger people are finding it harder to actually get into work and actually get some sort of career as opposed to just like stacking the shelves at Walmart or something like that? Because again, even with that, even if you're pulling good money for like say somewhere in the Midwest, which would make you back in the day at least a good bet for a woman, whereas now you're invisible just because you don't have that glamorous job. I mean, shit, like there's even women who turn down plumbers who are earning really good money because he's a plumber. Whereas you could get some guy who's a lawyer who's mortgaged up to the eyeballs and has no spendable money at the end of the month. but she would much rather be seen with him because then she can show off to her girlfriends
Yep.
about that. And so that's just going to get worse and worse, I would say. But maybe this is where I agree with you on the whole accelerationism idea, and just let it burn out, let it crash, and let the women realize their own mistake. But that's for all the other men, so they can like go back to the plantation, do that. I'm just going to sit there with like a glass of wine and just watch the whole sort of like train wreck as it happens.
Okay, now I gotta say this though. When it comes to the plantation, what do you think is the allure that these guys have to the plantation? Like, well, Phil, I'm in the negotiation stage of brief, and if we just get the launch in, what do you think about these guys? Like, what is it? What do you think is the pull that gets them that they crave the plantation so much?
Well, I've never understood it. I think I was probably going to, if there was no MGTOW, I would have just been like one of life's bachelors anyway. So I don't get the whole pull towards like having a wife and family. And I'm sure it's all very good. It's just not for me. So I don't understand it. But there's a good percentage of, say, the MGTOW crowd, and they yearn for like those 1950s days, as they tend to phrase it. Whereas we know women just had less scope to thought it up, which is why they behaved as they did back then. And they just yearn for this, so I can actually have that white picket fence, the 2.4 children, and the dog, and all the rest of it. I don't see that as happiness. If a man is yearning for that, I think he's looking for acceptance from his fellow man, say, oh, you did good. Instead of like looking internally for the validation and then just being happy with what you've created in your own life. So if you're looking for somebody else to clap you on the back and say you did a good job, you're never going to be happy. You're always like a woman, you're going to be chasing that validation from someone else, which never actually really comes.
Well, when it comes to that dynamic about, like you said, a woman that never comes, and do you believe that there's just as much to blame in terms of the blue pill conditioning? Because I was critical earlier of these guys with the idyllic 1950s, right? But yet, let's face it, what makes them any different than the girls who believe the feminist lie, right? Because isn't it the same feminist lie that just because you're dealing with guys, the rules are different, and girls, the rules are different? Like, I want to think about this second, Phil. There's a guy out there right now who will tell you if one law changes, I'm going to go back to the plantation, right? He can't really describe why that's a good idea. He's just that indoctrinated. And that's why, like, on a base level, there is almost some sympathy for the women, because it's like, wait a minute. They've been indoctrinated, because if we criticize guys and say that we're sad that a guy is a cuck, how can you not kind of sympathize for the girl who turned into a thot? Because let's face it, having no dad around just had a different effect on the boys and the girls.
Yeah, I mean, for the guys in this, and whether say looking for validation, there is no great difference between that and the sort of fraternity of women, I suppose. Is the question, how do we change this, or just what do I think about it?
Yeah, just what you think about it, because the fact that a guy keeps on saying that he wants the 1950s housewife, and then yet, okay, the girls say that they didn't want that, right? They said they were oppressed in that. So how do these guys not see the cognitive dissonance of the fact that, okay, girls say they want to be liberated, and of course they are, right? And they're miserable. But if you reversed it tomorrow and all of a sudden 1950s housewife returns, wouldn't it eventually just come back and come full circle?
Oh, I think it would. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys, are they still in the negotiation phase where they're trying to like outthink the system and get back to the plantation? So, and there's a lot of guys in the MGTOW who are still there. They're calling themselves MGTOW, and I question that, because if you've walked away, you don't care what happens to the plantation, whether it burns or it flourishes. It's just that place over there. That's for the other people, and you don't care. But like a lot of these guys, if I can just get back there, if I can trick the system into accepting me, I'll be able to be happy again, because everyone will look at me and think I'm a good guy. And I think going back to perhaps pre-war times, when you grew up as such, in the UK, you had to be 21 to be an adult back then. You became independent. Chances are you probably had like a wife, you had some kids maybe on the go and stuff like that. but you were so concerned with your own thing, you weren't concerned with what anybody else thought about you. And everyone seems to be latching on to this thing of like, what other people think of me? And it's so wrong. I mean, my oldest customer, I've mentioned him a couple of times. He's in his early 80s, had like a few dolls. And he had said to me at one point where we'd actually had like a bite to eat, having like a glass of wine together. And he said, you know, Phil, if people found out our connection, I don't know what people would think of me. I would have to kill myself. It's like, really? And I like this. Now, he comes from a different era and stuff like that. But like that whole what people think of me pull was strong. And I just like to think that people are better than that. Now, I like to think that when people grew up back in days of yore, you got past that. But because he was a retailer in his local community, what people thought of him had an impact on his business, which is why he, I suppose, is a bit different. But I've known a lot of other older guys of a similar-ish age, and they just kind of got to a point that people can think what they like. I don't give a fuck. Whereas I don't hear that amongst younger guys at all. Because now, if you're still cucking for women, what people think of you will affect your chances in being able to bag a woman, like for average guy. And perhaps they overthink this problem. And whereas, like you and I will know, if you just don't give a shit, your chances go up through the roof, if that's important to you.
Absolutely.
But like a lot of guys will just, oh, but if I do this, I'll look stupid. It's like, don't care. I mean, it's like an old game mode to get people past their fear of what other people think of them. I think it was in the novel, the game, actually. Some guy walked around like the town center, like where all the shops and the malls were, with like a dildo attached to his head. He said, once you've done that for about 45 minutes, you really don't give a shit what people think of you, because like you get beyond people laughing at you. And that's it. I thought it was a good exercise. Then when you stop giving a shit what people think of you, you can concentrate on what you want. And it seems to be like a lost concept on young men.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to these young men, Phil, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was an article where there was a mom who was basically kind of like decrying that her young son was being called a simp. What do you think about the young guys just holding these guys accountable? Because I think the young guys hold guys accountable more so than the older ones.
There's a lot of people calling simp going on, certainly more amongst the younger men than any older guys. But are they doing that because it's cool? If it suddenly became uncool, would they be doing the same sort of thing?
Agreed.
Because I think when I was having my red pill rage phase, I was calling like a few guys simps. I just don't care now. You can simp if you want to. That's up to you. You can lose your own life if you want to. Your choice. I just don't care anymore. That's where I tend to think that like being true MGTOW tends to come to the fore. Because when you don't give a shit, you're not necessarily going to help anyone. You're not trying to sell MGTOW to anyone. But if somebody comes up to you and says, look, my life's a fucking absolute pile of dog shit, what can I do about it? Then you've got all of this advice to bestow upon someone without bias or anything like that. And you just don't care. And it's the best way to go about it. Whereas I've seen guys who are all full of enthusiasm for MGTOW and they want to convert the world, and it just doesn't work. You can't sell MGTOW or red pill stuff like that.
I agree. Well, we talk about so many issues in the manosphere, MGTOW, red pill. What do you think is going to be the thing, Phil, that when it comes to this mainstream acceptance, because we're starting to hear these terms, right? What is your take on MGTOW going mainstream?
MGTOW is separate from like the red pill.
Well, I say all in the same breath, because because the marriage rate is the lowest it's been in recorded history. Clearly, guys, even if they do get a girlfriend or she gets knocked up, they just aren't signing that contract. So it's like, what do you see going forward with this?
They'll talk about it in similar ways to like they might mention Alex Jones. It's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but. And then they'll agree with stuff that Alex Jones has said historically. They'll do the same sort of thing. It's like, I'm not one of those women haters, but I agree with this, and this kind of idea. And I think that's how they'll go about it. I'm not one of them, but I agree with a couple of things. And then they'll make their points. And hopefully they won't get into a discussion with a feminist over it, but it's going to get more and more where guys think, well, these guys are wrong, but I think this, this, and this. And they're kind of hiding behind the mainstream idea that we're all misogynists, basement-dwelling hermits kind of idea. But the more mainstream it gets, they just need one point to say, I disagree with that, so I'm not one of them, but. And that's how I see that would go. And I mean, there was a time, where was I? Philippines. There was this Australian guy. He would have been almost 60. He heard my British accent, so he knew I could speak English. Oh, you're okay? So you're from England? So we started talking. Guy had never heard of MGTOW or anything like that, but he was hardcore red pill. He actually said to me, I'll never have anything to do with women again. Now, he was whoring it up, but what he meant by that is I'm never getting married, never living with a girl, any of that, all the old ideals of the MGTOW. And he'd never heard of the acronym or red pill or anything like that. So I also see like a lot of guys doing that. So they're coming round, but they don't know what the red pill is.
Agreed. Well, if you think about it though, Phil, I think the reason why these guys don't know is because, well, let's face it, at the end of the day, we all came to the same conclusion, right? Like I mean, it doesn't matter if you're like you're more. Let's say you're more the incel path. This guy's more the PUA path. You're on your path. It doesn't matter what path you're on. Eventually, everyone's going to come to the same conclusion.
I'd be interesting to know, because it's going to take a while for all of the men to kind of come to a majority conclusion that the red pill is the way. And I think a lot of guys will begrudgingly spit those words out if they come to it. But the women might also come to that as well, because they're going to hide behind the whole idea of like, oh, I don't need no man. Because now, notice how like none of these women are getting serious boyfriends or live-in boyfriends or anything like that. Certainly no husbands.
Agreed.
They'll hide behind that whole idea. Oh, well, I didn't want one anyway because I'm a feminist. Yeah, I'm a whatever.
You can't fire me because I quit, right?
Yeah, that sort of idea. So it'll be interesting to see if the women actually then start hiding behind that. And then a lot of the men are hiding behind the red pill. Then do we just accept that this is then normal? And then we go through to the transactional nature of relationships.
Drex, you look a little tired there.
Well, it's my eye. So my right eye. So that's why you see me keep rubbing my eyes. So something burned my eyes earlier. That's why if you notice, I keep just constantly going like this. You ever had that feel where you're sitting there and you're going through the day and all of a sudden something like, it's like, I don't know if it's like something goes in your eye and you're like, ow. And for the rest of the day, it just burns, right? And I don't know what the hell happened. Like I've been rubbing my eyes all night. Like, dude, something got in my eye. I don't know what that something is. It's just like, God. So now I have a right eye that's like constantly like struggling to stay up. It's like burning. Left eye is good. Right eye, I don't know if you saw that. I was like wiping tears away. It's like tearing up. So there must be some kind of like particle in my eye or something. But someone put a message here, Phil. I want your take on this. I like this one. This is in regards to the COOF. The things are already in motion proving that vaccination status is mandatory. What do you think about that?
From a UK perspective, I think we're just gearing up for that. There's a lot of reticence about it, so they're going to try and do the sort of like frog in the pot sort of idea. We're going to just slowly turn up the heat because we're already in a position where about 50% of the population are they're still on with the whole sort of face masks idea. We've relaxed the laws now, so you don't need them to go into stores and stuff like that. Uh-huh. And we've got 50% of the people who are still terrified because the shiny box in the living room told them to be very afraid. So they still wear them. So we've got 50% of the UK population already converted to the idea that there's a pandemic, although no one's dying. So convincing the other section of the population is just going to take time, I think.
I had my dad try to goad me with fear this morning. And I'm just like, or it was last night. I think it was like, I want to say it was last night, then a little bit today. Phil, he's bought in 2,000%. So is my mom. Anything that box tells him, it's fact. COVID is scary. It's like,
it's something from that generation. I mean, my parents, they can remember a time before TV, but the idea that the TV might be lying to them is just utterly alien. It's like the government would never do anything that's not in my best interest. It's like, oh my God. It's like, Dad, you remember being made redundant by the government, right? Oh, yeah, but that was different. Oh,
okay. Yeah, they always hit you that was different, right? And, Phil, one of the things that I find funny about the whole notion of like the old guard versus the whether it be old guard versus our guard versus new guard is that like for all the internet has pluses and has minuses, just guys talking on a global scale. I think that's what really was the difference is, because I don't think your dad would be the same guy if guys back then were all talking the way we are now, even back in your dad's heyday.
Well, to hark back to then, before the price of drinks got taxed into oblivion, everyone used to go down to the pub in the UK and guys talked. Now, notice with the pandemic, that was one of the first things that they shut down. They said, no, you're not allowed to go to the pub. We can't have people sitting around a table, like talking to one another, because that will transmit the beer virus. So that got shut down. So like men's networks were very difficult to do. And like people of my dad's generation, they don't sit around on Discord or Zoom or anything like that. It just
true.
So they're just like sitting there like disparate, just I suppose, enjoying life, I suppose, but they're not talking to one another. So when I've mentioned about various things about like the virus, my dad's first reaction, oh, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. And I had to push his buttons a few times to actually get where all this was coming from, but it was basically the shiny box told him that it's a conspiracy theory if you don't believe in it. So, all right, okay.
Well, it's funny. Look at you ever think about the irony of that? But if the little box told him there was a conspiracy theory, then what would he say, right? If the box told him the opposite, it's a conspiracy.
That's when you start to see all sorts of mental gymnastics. Because I've seen this happen historically, where it's flipped, and like you'll do some sort of cognitive gymnastics to make it work in his head, and therefore he wasn't wrong. Because also with my dad's generation, there's one of the things I noticed about men. They'll do anything to prove that they're not wrong.
Agreed.
They even do the wrong thing. Whereas the younger men are a bit more mentally athletic, but so could do it easier to prove that they're not wrong. But they're a bit more willing to accept that they're wrong than the older generation, for whatever reason that is. I don't know why. So I think that should be one of the first things of self-actualization, would be to admit that you can be wrong. And if you admit that you're wrong, it's a win-win for everyone, certainly you.
Yeah, well, that you've seen those campaigns like, I'm leaving the left and things like that, where people kind of realize, and you see this with women also, where, there are these so-called, anti or former feminists, right? Where they were on one side, they saw the error of their ways, like, wait a minute, I'm miserable, I'm X, Y, and Z, and then they left. What do you think is the thing that once someone says they leave, how do you think they should be viewed by other side, right? Like, so if someone says, I'm leaving the left, how should right-wing people view a person who says, I left the left, or whatever?
In the same way as I've said to people about, say, male feminists, and they see the error of their ways. I know also a lot of MGTOW wanted to point the finger and say, see, we told you were wrong. It's like, no. Just say, yeah, come on in. We've got things to tell you. And just bring them in as though like they weren't once an arch enemy or something like that. Just bring them in. They've seen the error of their ways. Don't be a dick about it. Because otherwise you risk alienating people.
And so, Phil, that's where I struggle, because, okay, a part of me wants to have that tough love to be like, yo, I want to exclude you because the fact that you were a male feminist, that literally goes against your very nature and your self-interest, and you were against it. So you should just be banned. But it's like, if you ban them, let's face it.
Then they can never come to your side ever.
Yeah, it's like, but Phil, we can't let this go. You were a male feminist. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, the worst thing about that is it probably means that you're a pedophile, because it generally does.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we got some super chats.
Oh.
I kid, guys. You're not pedophiles. You're cool. Fat Andy says, Drex, Tim, Phil, and RPM, I appreciate the work you guys do. Cheers. Well, cheers back to you.
Thank you.
Nightmare41042 says, good to see the gang back together. Miss Penance, though. Yeah, so do I.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what happened?
I could have brought her on, but all she had on was a pair of stockings. I don't think YouTube would have allowed it. Because Ricky's actually lost a couple of his YouTube channels in Dollhouse San Antonio for showing TP titties. Would you believe?
Are you serious?
Well, you know, TFM got a strike because he was just doing the unboxing of Celestina. And, you know,
Stop.
Yeah, so like a mannequin can get you banned.
Yep.
Wait, what?
Man, you got to take care of Susan.
Oh my God! What? So they're mad that people see a doll, and that's too much.
Well, it's as TFM says, if men like it, it's oppressive.
Yeah. Alex says, "Hey Drex, thanks for taking a picture with my brother in Houston. I bought him some Wheaties on your suggestion."
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm assuming he must have been at Matt Surrey. It's a surreal feeling to just be like out and about, and someone's like, "Yo, Drex, hey, we love you on Nick's show," and it's kind of like, "Hey, random," because everyone's anonymous online, right, Phil? You don't know who these people are, so they just, "Hey, what's up?" You're like, "Hey, random dude." But yeah, it is a great feeling though.
Wolfgang Deo says, "Where are the thoughts? I was promised thoughts." Because I named the stream Thot Girl Summer. It's a celebration of the worst of us, isn't it?
Yeah, Phil, these girls are doing the most, man. You know, we got so many stories coming from military guys, especially, and you know, Phil, have you talked to anybody that like just the thoughtness alone pushed them toward a doll? Have you gotten that yet?
I hear that more from younger guys. If you were saying like, the women are just out of control and it's just too dangerous. I'd rather do that. For older guys, they tend to be divorcees and they've had like the big tragedy in their life, so they just see the error of their ways of like being married. So obviously, just the doll life is just the way to go for them. But it's very rare that I would get somebody over 40 who hasn't been married and is going for a doll. They always seem to be directed one way or another. But talking of thoughtness, as we've hit summer over here in the UK, we usually only get about like 2 weeks of actual real decent weather where you can actually go outside without a jacket and maybe just a t-shirt. And it's actually gotten hot enough where you could strip down to like a set of shorts and actually get like a suntan. And I've noticed then all of a sudden the women in their little summer dresses suddenly started to just just erupt out of the houses onto the high street, and they're bouncing around. Any excuse to like jump up and down, get their titties bouncing, and throw their hair around. And it's like, oh, it's summer again. Yeah, you can tell.
It's like the green life when it rains in the desert, right? It just everything just kind of springs up. Wolfgang Deo says, "Wait, why can I not club the girl and bring her back to my cave in the modern world? I was getting so much success too."
I suppose he can. It's just there's usually a jail sentence afterwards. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But then once you got full MGTOW, you won't even want to do that.
I can go back to sleep now. I've done my job.
Man, you know what I find funny? Oh, go ahead, Tim.
This sciatic nerve pinch just takes all my energy.
Oh no, dude. Well, that's why I said even with my eye, one of the worst feelings in the world is that like there's a bodily breakdown, and it affects your ability to whether to sit, to move. Phil, have you ever had that thing where, especially if you're an eyeglass wearer, which you are, your eyes are tired. You aren't tired, but your eyes are tired. You ever had that? You're like, just having them open as long as you were sitting down, you'd be good. It's just your eyes themselves are fatigued.
I usually find that like, all right, I just need to put the specs on. Put the specs on, no difference. It's like, oh shit, now it's time to go to bed. I'm fucked.
Yep.
Wolfgang Deo also says, simp comes from, apparently, suckers idolizing mediocre pussy.
Yep.
As such, if you are settling, you kinda are simping. However, if you are the breadwinner, that is not simping. This would be gender roles or how a union makes a family, not merely simping.
That kind of just what I said earlier, but at the end of the day, here's the thing. Anything that is traditional by traditional standards, by modern day is considered simping. It's kind of like what you said earlier about with someone who is at one point they're considered a leftist and now they're centrist because it's like you've moved the goalpost so much. So simping by modern standards is basically being traditionalist, right? Like that's basically what a simp is.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of. If you go back though, like my grandfather's era, like he never did anything like carried up bags for his wife or anything like that. He just got on and did his shit. So we would say it's almost like uber masculine. So there was less of the simping. The simping seems to have come around like my father's generation. That like, now he was born in the late 40s, but kind of came to be like something of an adult in sort of like the very early 60s.
That coincides with? That coincides directly with destroying the family, right? Like literally to the decade, to the year. Like this is when we keep that
pill and the emancipation of women.
Yep. Oh, let me ask you this. I'm glad you brought up the pill. Rollo Tomassi made a comment that the birth control is deadlier than the atomic bomb.
Because it was the one responsibility that women had, and they're now released of that responsibility just with that one contraceptive pill. And they can thought it up as much as they want. There are no consequences to that behavior.
Thought girls summer.
Well, one of the things is when he said that, I started thinking back. It was a great clip. I think that was when Rollo Tomassi was on Fresh and Fit, and I think that's leading to what he talked about in that episode where he said, "What do you think about the she economy?" Right? The she economy is going to be, Phil. What are you going to do with all these unmarried single women in the future?
Well, have you noticed in the economy? And very correctly, I suppose the economists say women control like 80% of spending. Right?
Yeah.
But this is harking back to a time when they were spending husbands' money. And people in general are very free with other people's money. This isn't necessarily a female thing. But now that we could call it like the great separation, the lack of marriage, which is happening these days, women are now starting to manage their own money. And they're suddenly... I'm starting to see the demise of the department store in the United Kingdom. Like big names that have been around for like 200 years, they're all folding. They're almost all gone now because women, like I would say men, let's say you want to buy a laptop. You don't go to the department store. You would go to the laptop store, the specialist store in laptops. Women are now starting to do that because they find their money's going further now that they're spending their own money. Whereas when it was husband's money, oh, fuck it, I'll just go for the most convenient place to actually pick one of these up. I don't care how much it costs.
Agreed.
And that's where I'm starting to see the switch in the economy, or the big switch anyway. And marketing as such is now not being aimed so much at a wife because there are so few of them around. The ones that are still around are at least 60 plus. There's not that many wives around anymore. So they're trying to aim the marketing at, say, the more single woman might be attached, but they don't have the money to spend. And once the marketers get their heads screwed on correctly, you'll realize there's more money with single men than there ever will be with single women. And that's where the money is now. And I think it's probably going to take maybe another 5-10 years, but I think the guys are going to get it in marketing. Go, hold on. If the guys have got all the money and they're not getting married to women, we need to change marketing. And this whole sort of female-centric thing will then just change.
I agree with that.
Two more super chats. Back 2,000 years. Wolfgang Dao says, back 2,000 years ago, you would become a priest. Lol. However, if you were wanting to get married, you may as well be going to a place where people hold marriages together. Church. You are looking in the wrong area. Cities. Are you really happy?
I strongly disagree with him on that because the church. Like, what girls do you find in the church, Phil?
To be honest, they're the secret whores, as I call them.
Thoughts on a cross.
Yeah, I mean, they'll do all sorts of stuff as long as no one finds out. The attitude hasn't really changed.
Yeah, and Nick Naylor says, do more of this. There's no Nick on weekends, and I need something to watch late at night. All right, all caught up. I feel so. All right, all caught up. Apparently, there was a spammer in the chat earlier.
Was there?
Yeah. So I told people to
doing
wake
what?
me up if something happened, but
I don't know. I saw that.
it was a while back.
5 Simple Words says the church is 10 times worse. The church is cut super hard. Dude, Phil, I've talked about this numerous times, that the church has been completely compromised. Like, because everything has been compromised. But like, I think the church is the most dangerous of all. More dangerous than like just your media, but because there's a certain level of trust involved in the church, right? Where people are giving blindly. And because the church has been cucked, they're putting out the information. So now, if ever there was a place where a guy said, wait a minute, what's happened in society is wrong, that's gone, because now the church is agreeing with everything that feminist says, right?
Well, even if it hadn't, the churches, and I tend to talk from the perspective of the Catholic Church because I kind of grew up in that, their modus operandi to get men to do stuff is all about shame. And they shame guys into doing everything that needs to be done. So if you end up like in a divorce situation and you get like a Dre level of alimony awarded against you, the church will say, well, you just got to grit your teeth, be a good man, and just do what you have to do. So hence the reason why there's almost no men in church these days. It's almost like a female congregation.
I have talked to people about this, and the hell, this thing was giving me stuff. I had talked to a few guys about this, right? And in regards to the church. And I mean, we've known this for a while, because do you know what church has become? It's basically become the single mother and spinster, highlight hour, right? Because they can do no wrong. Dude, have you ever listened to what some of these people are saying? Phil, these women can do no wrong. None. Like, and you know what? You're starting to see that with things like the U.S. women's soccer team. Like, they never thought, hey, maybe we should go out and practice, right? It's all about social justice. The church is basically a virtue signaler, right? Yeah, woman. They treat men as disposable.
Well, if you consider it's run by a priest, this is supposed to be a guy who's not allowed to have sex. So he's going to cuck harder than anyone else out there.
Oh, dude. And I love how people say that, because, Phil, you and I both know he's just not having sex on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. People, and this is why I tell guys, man, don't listen to all of that talk about, hey, Phil, you just need to meet a nice girl here. I asked Team Sneed to give me an actual location where all these good girls are, right? Do you think he was able to give me a location?
Well, I was going to say, when I've had that, you just need to meet a good girl and like everything will work out. So, yep, 48 years and I'm still waiting. Haven't seen one yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're all demons in the making once you get beyond the makeup and the nice outfit and all the rest of it. Genesis knew what it was writing about. You just didn't get the moral of the story when you read the book.
Adam was a simp. Adam was a super simp. And had these guys kept their pimp hand strong, which they didn't. And Phil, let me ask you this: how do you feel about the very nature that, like, deep down, it was prior generations who literally sold you out?
I suppose it's not great to actually think about, but knowing human nature to be what it is, everyone would just be like that. It's like hating on women for being thots. That's just what they are. It doesn't change anything, hating anything. It's just like, get on with what you're doing. Hence, perhaps why I've just tapped out and I just don't care. It's not so much a devil may care attitude. It's just a case of, I'm just going to do my thing. If you're going to be that kind of guy that worries about me not having a family, that's your problem, not so much mine. I'm enjoying life as it goes. Yeah, so I'm trying not to think too much about like prior generations or anything like that.
Well, the reason why I say that is because from, we talked about this in the live chat, from a socioeconomic standpoint, the U.S. was sold down the drain years ago, right? And, you know that the rent moratorium is coming up here in America at the end of the month. And, and it's become a meme now with the "Hey Big Head" text, right? And Phil, have you talked to guys who are suddenly, let's say they were average run of the mill guys to you, suddenly started getting more play? Have you noticed that in the UK?
I haven't, but to be honest, anyone who's doing that, I generally don't rub shoulders with them, so to speak. So if they are, which they might be, I don't know. I just tend to I'll have like a big sigh and like they'll see the light after a while. So I just like let them do their strange thing. I tend to weirdly perhaps pay more attention to what the women are doing. Like as I was saying before, they put on the summer dresses and they're bouncing around, like making the titties bounce in the sunshine. One other thing I did notice with the women as well that I noticed in the UK, when lockdown kind of kicked in hard, and we were allowed like a couple hours exercise or whatever the hell it was, all of a sudden every woman wanted to be in really tight jogging outfits and bouncing around the streets.
Yeah. Well, and you have to get that dopamine hit, right? That fix of attention.
Because I remember it was around about the same time RPM was releasing videos saying that like all of a sudden him on his like delivery job, every girl was suddenly wanting to be part of them. And it's like, nope, I'm out. And it all came together at the same time. It's like as soon as there's like a lockdown and you can't just like snare any man that's like within arm's reach, all of a sudden the women, like there was like a desperation to them.
I agree completely on that. Now I want you to think about this, Phil. One of the reasons for the desperation, isn't that based solely on the fact that their biology dictates that they pride and cherish security above all else, right? So if their security is threatened even a bit, they panic, right?
Well, I suppose if you're used to having sort of like a number of beta orbiters at all times, and all of a sudden you're locked down at home and it's just you, because a lot of women, if they're not living alone, then they're living with other women, like in a shared apartment or something like that. So all of a sudden there's no guys around. So I can imagine to be a bit of a shock to the system, because there'll be something, that the sink is clogged up or something like that, and all of a sudden shit needs to be done. There's no man to do it. They'll be like, but, so what do we do? I could see them panicking just for that sort of reason alone.
Yeah, there's a lot of fish out of water kind of looks. I'm sure you've seen like those little videos. Like I always watch, like I don't do TikTok because obviously it's a Chinese spy app, but guys like Hammerhand and stuff will do these little clips, right? Where he sends a clip of one of these 304s doing something crazy, and it's like there was a time. It goes back to what you said, like, with BJ's. There was a time when that was considered risque, right? Nothing like. One of the things I've noticed, anything goes now, Phil. There is no more like shame or, hey, you can't do that. That's kind of foul. Anything and everything goes now.
Yep, I'm just waiting for them to up the ante and say like, sort of like beating a small child to almost a pulp. And as long as there's another girl in the background who could just shout, "You go, girl," then apparently everything's okay.
Definitely.
Women have zero consequences for the actions. And I mean, the legal system has backed that up, we know, but just on a sociological aspect, as long as the woman seems to be happy, it's okay. Whereas it's completely different if some guy does something wrong, or not even wrong, just disagreeable to women, then all of a sudden, no, we can't have that. And the shaming comes back out to the fore.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you this, Phil. What would be your advice to guys out there who the shaming language gets to them? Like, what would you give them as advice to get around or just kind of block out the shaming language?
Stop giving a shit. It's somebody else's problem. If they think that you're doing something wrong and you think you're doing something right, just listen to you. But it's almost as though we come out of the box programmed to listen to what other people think. Mm-hmm. I mean, like we've all, like when we were at school, back when we were kids, and you came home crying and said, somebody called me a nasty name, and your parents would tell you, just don't listen to them. That doesn't seem to be a thing now. Apparently it's parents have to go down to the school and say it's like all sort of like hate preaching and stuff going on, and there's a whole sort of like police incident these days. Back when I was a kid, you were just told, just get on with it, just don't listen to them. And everyone seems to have forgotten that sort of that pearl of wisdom these days. And they should take it to adulthood, because until you get that, I don't think you can reach adulthood. There's certainly no self-actualization until you actually get to that point.
Well, I'm glad you brought up self-actualization because that's one of the main points of the red pill community in MGTOW in particular. Phil, what do you think is holding a lot of these guys back?
Um, if I peer directly into like their psyche, it's I think, and I've got no real evidence to back this up, is that they're not really MGTOW. They're using MGTOW as a crutch, as a reason why they haven't got a woman, or they say they don't want a woman.
Uh-huh.
There's so few guys out there who are genuinely, that's it, not for me, not doing it. And everyone else, like as Aaron Clary said like a while back, there's a lot of incels masquerading as MGTOWs, and I think that is the bigger problem in the red pill community. Because I would say the red pill community is a lot smaller than we actually think it is, the true red pill community.
Agreed.
But I don't know what your opinion on that is, though.
Well, Phil, here's the thing about the red pill community. It's like I think it almost acts as a shift. Just as many people who claim that they are not it are the same amount of people who claim that they are. It's just that think of it like this. You talked about that guy that you met, that the Australian, right? He didn't realize he was MGTOW. I would argue that what it is because if the marriage rate is the lowest it's been in recorded history, clearly people are getting the message. I just truly believe that it's a case of you have the guys who kind of realize it and they accept what they see, right? They don't fight it anymore. Because think about it. What is red pill rage? You're fighting reality, right? This can't be. I loved her so much. But what happens when guys just accept, like, yeah, that's what it is?
Yeah, after you've gone through like the rage, railing against the lies that you were told, and then you try and reason and negotiate with it, and you go through like a little bit of despondency, and then you come to acceptance and go, well, that's just the way it is. I'm just one man. I can't change the world. If I had a million hands, maybe I could do more, make more of an impact, but I can't. It's a bit like saying, like, I hate the fact that the sun comes up in the morning and sets in the evening. You might hate it, but you're just going to have to accept that that's the way it's going to be, unless you actually want to like live on a different world and like produce spacecraft to go to this different world. Nothing's going to change. So just accept your lot in life and concentrate on being happy with what I suppose God has given us, or whatever. Until you get to that acceptance phase, you're looking for a way to cheat the system, and the system can't be cheated, I would say, or it is the best way to think about it.
Well, when it comes to a lot of these things that are out there, Phil, have you ever, you talk about guys that you meet and that guys that you know. Have you ever sat down and asked guys like what it is exactly that they want for their children, right?
For their children, not so much. I've asked the question for a lot of be it MGTOW or wannabe MGTOW guys. I think is the most important question of their lives is what is it that you want out of life? Because until you know what you want out of life, you're just meandering through life without a path or a purpose. If you know what you want, I want to go from where I am now, A, to point B, and I'm going to go in the straightest manner possible to get there as fast and expedient a way as possible. So without that, I don't think there's a lot of guys know how to achieve anything that they want in life and therefore be happy. And I was asking like a fair few MGTOWs, if you've got all the money, you've got all the means, you know all the people, what is it that you want that was going to make you happy? If nothing was going to change, every day was going to be like Groundhog Day. So if you can achieve that happiness Groundhog Day, you'd be happy for the rest of time. And almost no guy can answer that question. I mean, I thought going around the world was going to like show me like a load of different cultures and stuff like that, and I'd be able to piece it all together. And it wasn't until I actually got back home and I just realized I just needed a few friends to shoot the shit with, and I'm a happy guy. I don't need the sports car, I don't need the yacht, I don't need the big house. And this is probably why I rent like a 2-bedroom apartment here at the minute. It's just not important to me. I don't care.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I had this conversation with the guys in the chat, and we basically said it's like this. Because men don't need much to survive and thrive. Anytime when it comes to, I said this about the college experience. Do you remember, Phil, there was a time when people would talk about how, certain places they didn't like the place, right? And what you really boil down to is when someone said, especially women, said they don't like a place, that just means that they didn't have good social interactions, right?
I mean, I mentioned that about where I come from in England, which is the northeast of England. It's a beautiful place. Unfortunately, it's full of people from the northeast of England,
Yeah,
which is why I'm not there anymore.
of
So,
course.
a place can be beautiful, but like you really don't want to go there because it's always the people that screw shit up.
It's the people. Like, dude, you can, and this is what happens when I learned this in college. You can go to a really crappy college town, right? Be the kind of like, this kind of place is gonna suck. You get with the right athlete or something, just the right person, it becomes fun. It becomes its own kind of thing. You're like you only remember the good times you have with these people, right? You don't remember the classes. And I don't know. I wish more people would understand self-actualization, Phil, is very real because I address this issue where, and I want your take on this, the whole good guy trope, right? I have a problem with when guys talk about how, like my listeners, there's a lot of you guys out here, you guys are good guys. Phil, what do you think about, like, how many of these, like don't you feel that it's kind of messed up for a guy to say that he's a good guy, he's a catch to women and vice versa? Because it's like only the opposite sex would know because they know how important something is, right?
I would say so. I mean, the terminology is not great, but I know what guys are like. They just want like an easy few criteria to fulfill and therefore then become the good guy. But the good guy is relative. A better term would be compatible guy. Like I'm good for this kind of woman. This would work. There's no like if they talk about like I'll be 6 foot tall, 6-inch dick, 6-figure income. All that. Therefore, like I am everything that a woman wants, but like most women will turn you down because it just ain't gonna work. So to be the compatible guy would make more sense, and that's even the same like in say male to male friendships type of thing like that. Let's say there's nothing wrong with John Doe in the high street, but like I just for whatever reason we don't get on well together. There's nothing wrong with him. I don't hate him, but just he's not a guy that I would bond with, and it's it's the same for male female as it is male male in that respect. So as you were saying about people as well, and this is definitely more a male thing. Let's say you and I, we're getting on really well. We could actually be locked up in like a prison cell and actually have a good time because we get on well together.
Yep.
And this sort of thing kind of infuriates women because they need more of an environment and a surrounding space. Which is
absolutely.
Nice. I tend to think so they can show that shit off to the girlfriends again. It's got nothing to do with just enjoying the time or the moment. Whereas guys are much more about that. It infuriates women that a man can just sit there in a room with nothing else other than a chair and a TV, and he's watching the game and he's loving life. And it infuriates women to the point that they can go insane over this. I just want to be that happy, and women can't do it because they only seem to be able to enjoy the suffering of another human being, which is why they like the jealousy of their girlfriends. And these are people that they like. It's weird.
Yeah, the other thing is feels like we actually want what's best for people. Like, I've been criticized, I'm sure you have, when it comes to your solutions, but it's like, my thing is this, they're not going to understand by just telling them this message, right? Like okay, have you ever seen this film? You can show them the red pill, right? You can give them all the explanations. They just don't want to accept it, right? Oh, no, women are like that. Oh, you guys are just bitter. You're gay. Who hurt you? And yet they see the reality of things. And have you ever seen that film where you can literally see them, like the gears turning in their mind, like, uh-oh.
I mean, a lot of times with that one, guys might have a response for like, who hurt you? I think like a lot of guys who are certainly MGTOW have had some sort of tragedy, but it always stops me in my tracks because they say like, who hurt you? And I'm like, well, no one. Because I'm one of the few MGTOW out there without a tragedy, which pushed me towards MGTOW. I drifted that way naturally. So when they say, who hurt you? I was like, well, I've got no sob story to give you or anything like that. I just observed female nature to be what it is. And women hate hearing this one from me.
Yeah.
I've stopped telling them because it always ends up in some sort of verbal jousting. So I just shrug my shoulders and I don't know. But it's just easier for me because I don't need to get into the arguments with women anymore. Because I know unless you agree with them, they want to start shouting at you. It could even involve start slapping and stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? I've got better shit to do than like talk to women about
Exactly.
stuff like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because so Phil, what do you say? And I talked about this, right? Like I'm sitting here looking at my notes. The guys who are basically kind of doing the same thing females are doing, they feel like entitled to like this certain type of woman. I'm like, you're not even the man she wants. I'm looking at it right here.
I don't know if you watched the guy on YouTube or wherever, but Sargon of Akkad, he's fairly well known.
I'm aware of him. Yeah.
He recently, like in the last week or so, he did a stream with a guy called Destiny, who's a bit more left-leaning.
Yeah, I know that is. Yep.
And they were talking, and I generally don't like Destiny because he talks over people and talks very fast instead of like reasoning out his thoughts. But this time he was like quite slow and reasoning. And he said, like, I will often see this with like a lot of younger men. And I had to agree with Destiny. A lot of guys are like bitching on about the fact they can't get the trad wife. And I said, yeah, I've kind of heard that. So, fair enough. And they will list all of these criteria that they want or demand from like a potential mate, shall we say. And yet they don't stand up to the criteria of the traditional husband.
They don't.
They don't have like the job, like they don't have a look, they don't take care of themselves, they don't go to the gym, and none of these sorts of things. And yet they demand like this perfect 1950s housewife to be just there for them, just because
which is also a myth.
Well, indeed, but like, if you've got criteria, surely it's got to be mirrored up to you as well. You would expect, right?
No, I don't expect that. Don't call me Shirley.
We're going back to the days of Airplane. I'm old enough to remember that.
Oh, God. Leslie Nielsen is one of my favorite actors.
Oh, speaking of Leslie Nielsen, Naked Gun was on, and here I am looking at O.J. Simpson and the young Anna Nicole Smith. It's just, you guys ever catch yourself watching an old movie and you're shocked at what you see? Like, man, like, this is how different things were back then.
The Wall was particularly cruel to you.
I noticed that because one of my old favorite movies, which could never be made now because it's Disney, was the first version of Tron. And starting to see some of the actors from there because they're really aging hard now, and they actually looked young in the days when they were in Tron. Because what was that? Was that like 84 or something like that?
Yeah, the original. I'll look it up, dude. I'm pretty sure it was 83, 84. Let me see. Tron original. Let's see, Tron. 1982. Jesus.
Jeez, there we go. That's the Jeff Daniels, Bruce Boxleitner.
Oh my God. Well, you know, when it comes to a lot of these movies, we've talked about this during the live chat, Phil. What do you think about just this woke push in everything that we used to enjoy, right?
I'm at a bit of a loss on it because every time it brings up the old adage of like, go woke, go broke kind of idea. And it's just holding water every time. So every time you like what I would call doing the Gillette push these days, do that whole woke insanity and then just lose lots of money. But they seem to be pushing this so hard as though it's going to win them something. And it's losing them viewers in like TV and movies. So I don't know what they're hoping to win from this. I mean, initially, my attitude was they must be thinking, just push on ahead with it, double down on it, and people will accept it over time. But it's as though people are getting almost violently opposed to this like wokeism these days. I mean, maybe there's a certain demographic who have accepted it, but they're very quiet. And the only people I hear of are the people who hate wokeism. And it's pushing its way into politics and stuff now, where you can actually gain some support from people by being anti-woke. So I don't see what they can possibly win doing this. And it's destroying franchises that we've all known and loved and stuff like that. So I just don't see a good side to it unless there's something I'm missing.
Well, what do you think about going on from this woke era? What do you think comes next after? Because I try to explain to the guys out there in the live chat that don't look at this as permanent. Woke is just an era, right? Just like there's been lots of eras throughout history. So what do you think we go from here after the woke ends?
I mean, in the first aspect, I would expect it to be something of a reaction, but it depends. If this was like a gambit move, push so hard on the wokeism that you can almost retract it 50% back to the position where this was your intended position in the first place. So just like 50% wokeism just now suddenly seems acceptable. To start pushing in the wokeism that way, because as we've seen through the pandemic, people seem to be open to that sort of thing. Like people in the UK now, lockdown, it's just a part of life. Wearing a mask to go and get some groceries, it's just something that you do. And now that we don't even have the requirement, people are still doing it because they love the drama of being afraid of something. Like I've been saying since day one of the pandemic, it's like, if we're in a pandemic, you will know someone personally in your life who has died through this, and there will be like almost bodies piling up on the streets. That's a real pandemic. I don't know anyone who knows anyone who has actually really died. There's been people through the lodge that I know, because the average age is about 900 in my lodge. People who died and they had coronavirus, apparently. But this guy in particular had no immune system anyway. So if he caught the common cold, it would have killed him. So like, that's a real outlier. But I certainly don't know anyone under 40 who caught it and had any real ill effects. Now, I don't know that many people who've had any ill effects from the so-called vaccines, but I hear a lot about that online, where people have got like Bell's palsy and stuff like that, and not necessarily death, but like there's been like a lot of people with blood clots and like ended up.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine? Okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, you're one of the woke guys, right? And you believe everything the boob tube told you. Could you imagine going to get it and they're like, oh, by the way, you have Bell's palsy?
I'd be so pissed. I mean, it's not so much the main reason for me not getting the vaccine, because no doubt I've probably been contacted by my doctor. I think the letters have gone to the wrong address, but I haven't heard anything. I'm not chasing it up. But if the worst I'm going to get is feel a bit shitty for like a week and have to isolate, that's as bad as it's going to get. Why would I take that 1 in 1,000 risk of getting a vaccine and having some sort of ill effect? It's just not worth it. And I've used this argument with people. Like my oldest customer that I mentioned earlier, he's had 2 jabs, and he started to get all sorts of like physical ailments within a couple of weeks of having these jabs. And I was like, I put it to him, so like, you've been healthy for like God knows how long. All of a sudden you have 2 jabs, and all of a sudden you're having problems. And he couldn't see a correlation between the two.
No,
but because he was saying to me though, like, oh Phil, I'm like really getting attached to talking to you. Like, I would hate to think of something really bad happened to you. And said, dude, I could catch the worst coronavirus that there is. I'm just going to feel shitty for a few days. It's not going to matter.
That's it.
But because he's been told by the shiny box that it's a killer disease, he believes it.
And we know the thing is that people believe in this, right? People are invested in this. But at the end of the day, Phil, I talked to Team Snead about this, right? Like, just like the dream is over, and obviously, the communists are going to win this whole thing. What do you see is the major issue with guys just like you said earlier, just admitting the truth, right? They struggle. Like they'll sit there and see, this is the problem. They can't bring themselves to accept it.
If that involves them having to say, I was wrong before, I think that's the major hurdle that they've got, because no guy likes to admit that they're wrong. But if you self-actualize and say, look, it's better for me and I suppose society that I admit that I was wrong and see the error of my ways, it's almost like a childhood hurdle that they can't get over. There's just some sort of like societal block on them. It's like, nope, I have to be right all the time, or otherwise I'm not a man. It definitely seems to be a masculine thing. Women can admit that they're wrong. They might hate it, but it just depends on what happens on their social standing in their little clique that makes them bothered about being wrong. Being wrong means nothing to them. If it affects my standing within the female hierarchy, then that's different. But then being right can do the same thing. for women. So that's why I say they don't care about being wrong.
No, so here's the thing. Do you know what they do care about? They do love comeuppance, right? Like, that's why they don't really apologize, right? You ask any guy, have they ever gotten a sincere apology from one? Most guys would say no.
Yeah, because they then just turn into the little girl at that point, and they'd be as childish as they want. Whereas once you're a truly adult man and you've got responsibilities, there's no such avenue for a guy.
Oh, true. Yeah, somebody was sending me a message about Mannix. He's great. Well,
Oh, speaking of messages, man, my segues are impeccable. All right. Guy says Social Security is going to be insolvent by 2030. So what are women going to do when the government goes bust and can't pay them?
Going to do what they've always done. They're going to whore out the vagina for money.
Yep.
Always.
Yeah, well, you already see that in California and New York. I don't know if you guys heard about that. They're legalizing prostitution.
It was just a matter of time, wasn't it?
Yep. The government's not going to take care of these women, man. And
as long as that's as far as it goes. Because you know what the left's like. They'll start with prostitution and then they'll start making a move towards the kids.
Yep. Oh, God, nasty.
And then there's going to be homicides all around the place.
It's going to be fun.
The HMTs.
Yeah. I love giving RPM news source material. You know?
Well, it was my first time, I must admit. I thought he was the response I was expecting to get from RPM was like, yeah, I've already got this one, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Correct.
I don't know, Bill. I don't know if anything can ever match episode 148.
148's legendary. Although he did say he had a pretty good one coming out now today.
Ooh, I hope it's good, but 148 was so savage. The dude literally put on the mask.
Well, he said, you remember we jumped in while we were doing the bonus episode, he said this guy literally put the mask on in the video.
Yeah, that is special. Now, is he wearing her insides outside as a necklace? That remains to be seen. But the savagery, you ever notice, Phil, you always know it's a crime of passion because there's a savage nature, right?
Yeah. Also, people are yelling at your... people are yelling at your camera angle because you're slouched over again.
Yeah, so the issue is, so watch this. The way that this thing is set up, I have to lean into the mic because I need to get one of those arms or whatever.
And a second monitor.
I have to always lean in. Yeah, and a second monitor. It's like the most annoying thing ever, Phil. Like, so look. Cool. I have to lean in. It's the worst thing ever. So I have this pillow on my back. And it's like, and you know how it is when your back starts hurting, Phil. You're miserable.
Oh, tell me about
it. Back pain is, dude. It's miserable. Ugh.
All right. Wolfgang Deo says, MGTAU falls into the same problem as feminist ideology. The idea of society never marrying is actually written about by Paul at the end of the New Testament. He was stupid too. He ain't no Jesus, but he did quite well. Ideology. Wolfgang Dale also says both men and women have all this energy, and instead of putting it into raising children, now they are complaining about the other sex or their sex. People like to be lazy. Instead, why not find a lazy way to be super productive and generate wealth?
That requires personal accountability.
Which there is none.
There is none. Dude, here's the thing. Phil, I want your take on this as a Brit. Do I believe that there's 0% chance that things can turn around in the West. What is your opinion of the UK? Because I talked to Sneed about this, and I said, Sneed, I'm going to name something, and I want you to answer, has it gotten better or worse? So I was like this, the military. He's like, it's gotten worse. Social interactions between men and women, black and white, that's gotten worse, right? War, it didn't matter what you named, it was always worse, right? If everything is always worse, then you know that your civilization is done, right? Would you agree with that?
I'll largely go along with that. I mean, I don't have any direct experience with the military, but from what I've seen, yeah. So I'm just that's making me think: is there anything that has actually gotten better?
Yeah,
The only thing I can think
I
of
mean
is
that's serious. You give
technology is
it.
about the only thing that I can
Yeah,
think
yeah,
of.
but say like technology just makes the other things worse, right? Like, oh, relationships between men and women, technology made it worse. The family court, selections later worse. So everything got worse. So if everything got worse, how can you expect it to get better?
Yeah, unless we have a complete breakdown, societally speaking. And
And it has to be epic too.
it's
No.
going to be RPMs, HMT all round.
Yeah.
We've got savagery already in the UK. I mean, like the stabbings are getting worse in London. The grooming gangs are still happening. It's like nothing's really getting better in terms of that.
You
And yet,
explain what is going on because there are people out there who don't know what grooming gangs are and all the no-go zones. Like, explain what is happening currently.
well, with those grooming gangs, we will tend to say in the UK they're Asian. Now that generally comes back from like the British Commonwealth, and the only Asians that we had in the Commonwealth at the time were from the Indian subcontinent. It was the Brits who split up India into India and Pakistan. So we pushed all the Muslims into Pakistan. And all these guys tend to come from Pakistan, and they're grooming, you would say, little white girls. But these little white girls are, it sounds awful to perhaps say, but like the UK equivalent of white trash. They almost always come from single parent households where the mother just lets them go out till all hours. So they're like 12 to 14 years old, and they're out till like 3 in the morning. They're fucking these guys, they're drinking, they're having drugs, and that's how they groom them. Now, there's been a number of these guys jailed, but they were the police forces at the time when it was happening. The left-leaning councils at the time told the police to look the other way for the sake of diversity. Now, all of this has kind of come out in the wash a bit. So there's a bit of a political stink over it, so much so that there was, how do you say it, an investigation into the background of this, and this was going to be released publicly. But it was so sensitive, the government decided not to release it, which had created an even more outrage in the UK. So that suggests it's a lot worse than what the public actually suspect that it is. And that's just the grooming gangs. So then that's the TLDR of that. And of course, in the UK, we don't have guns because that's just outrageous, isn't it? So like we kill each other with knives these days. And we've now got the stabbing capital of the world in London. And weirdly, I wasn't expecting this to be ethnically separate, but it seems to be young black guys who are stabbing each other to death in London. Now, again, because they're of a person of color, the police aren't taking such a bad attitude over it. So we just got to kind of look the other way. And we've got Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, who's aiding and abetting all of this. This is the same guy that tells us when we have like a terrorist atrocity, like be it a bomb or like multiple stabbings or shootings, that's just part and parcel of living in a large metropolitan city in Europe. That's his attitude. And people still vote for the fucker. So this is why, like, the UK is probably finished at this point. It will take like bigger than Superman to turn it around at this point, I would say.
And the other thing is, it's funny you say, to turn it around because, Phil, I've been very critical about a lot of these guys. And my question is always, do you think they really want to turn it around? Because, earlier we said that a lot of these guys are like, just wait till one little thing about the law changes and I'm going to get back into relationships. Are you sure these guys even want to turn it around?
I don't think people know how to do things for themselves anymore. Because there was I think it was about 20 years ago. If something went down, say there was going to be like a stabbing, that type of thing, like members of the public would jump in and stop it. And they were encouraged by the authorities and the police force to not get involved, to let the police sort it out. And it's just now become like an endemic in society where it's somebody else's responsibility to sort it out. So this is why you've heard things like, oh shit, if they lock us down, there'll be riots on the streets, but there aren't, because it's somebody else's responsibility to sort something out. Agreed. So this is why I don't think anyone's going to turn anything around, because the attitude has to be, right, what do we have to do to turn this around. Nobody has that conservative value anymore. It's what did they have to do?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So different people have different solutions in terms of, some guys say, hey man, you can only save yourself. You can't be worried about society. And it's like, it goes back to the nature of man, right? We want to help other people, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I think you should just kind of take care of your own little village, right? Like your own little family.
Well, this is one of the things, to hark back to something TFM's talked about. We used to be a nation of communities. We're not anymore, and it's been encouraged by the authorities that we all become a disparate single people. Or even says a married couple, you're just a couple, you're not part of a community. Now, if you're part of a community and there's a stabbing, the community used to come together to correct the problem.
Agreed.
Whereas it's verboten these days, and I think that's by design, so that we then become easier to manage.
Easier to manage, easier to monitor, easier to control.
Yeah, and that's call me conspiracy theorist, but I think that's the modus operandi behind this whole pandemic.
Yeah, just more division.
Well, so much fear that people will just do whatever that they're told. And then we can bring in the new autocracy, if you like, and we're going to change everything.
Well, I agree. So, Phil, there was someone who had joked. I was at the bank, and he joked. Pretty soon they're going to start wearing the mask, literally on their chin, like a chin strap, and people will go, "Yep, this is how you get rid of COVID," and you can't tell them anything.
I see that when we had the mandate to, if you're going shopping or something like that in a place where there's going to be crowds of people, you had to wear the mask. It was always the older people, pensioners, right, that would walk around with the mask around here. It's not even covering the lips. And so, well, what's the point? It's, but I'm wearing a mask. There's COVID, And you're like, if you're the one who's supposed to be most vulnerable and at risk, then shouldn't you wear the mask properly? But these people, it's, as long as I've got a mask on, then I'm covered. And it's I was tempted to just put the mask over the top of my head, stick it over my ears and just see if somebody said anything. But I'm wearing a mask.
Yep. Yeah, literally. And Phil, all of this stuff that we see in society is a gear up, right? They're gearing you up for the new world order. Because think about it. So Phil, let's go back in time. If you had said you got to wear X, Y, and Z in the years 1988, it doesn't happen, right?
Oh, that's back in the era when we had stuff like punk rock, and you did have people who were, I suppose, somewhat more genuinely a rebel, and they just didn't go with whatever the general consensus was. Whereas now, the punk rock thing is to do whatever the left tells you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can't blame people because let's face it, I talked about this with a girl at work, and we were talking about the whole woke thing. I'm sure you heard about He-Man, right? They did He-Man dirty.
I've heard about it, but I've not seen anything.
I didn't watch it. All I heard was He-Man's killed, and it's all about She-Ra, right? Yay, her. It's just kind of that's not why people came to watch He-Man.
Funnily enough, I downloaded this months ago, and I finally watched that latest Terminator movie. And I'd heard a lot of what.
Dark Fate?
Yeah. Now I'd heard a lot about it. So I'd heard all the bad stuff, and maybe that primed me a bit. And I thought, actually, after finishing watching the movie, if you take out the sort of female supremacy bits, and there wasn't that many of them, because I can believe in the enhanced human stuff like that and having superhuman strength, and just the fact that she's a woman didn't really make that much difference to me. It could have been all right, but whenever there was some man doing something, they had to put him down.
Yeah, always.
That whole wokeism bit did spoil the movie, but that could have been half decent if they'd just taken that out. But they just felt the need. We have to be female supremacists here. So it's a shame. I mean, I haven't seen the latest Star Wars movies because of the same sort of thing that people would telling me and stuff. So I don't know whether to go ahead and do those movies as well to just see if I feel the same way. Not worth it, no.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look at the options that are available, right? If I were to tell you, hey, Phil, in the UK at the Megaplex, what's playing and who's going? How much of this new stuff has even intrigued you at all?
What stuff?
So we were talking about movies, right? How much of the new movies? We're talking, with He-Man, the wokeness. when it comes to this, how many of these things do you think people are even like want to be intrigued to go see the movies, right? Like, hey, Phil, the cinema's open. How many people do you just see like really even being excited at all? Like, oh yeah, now I'm ready to go back.
Yeah, not many, to be honest. And I'm from an era where like going to the cinema was like something that you really looked forward to.
Absolutely.
Now I kind of changed when like the internet era kind of came about, so I could like download movies. But there has been times where I say I'm not going to download that because I expect that to be a really good movie and I want to see it on the big screen and I actually have the experience. Like the thunderous sort of like sound and stuff like that. It's like Jurassic Park when it came out.
Yeah.
That sort of thing really needed to be seen on the big screen. That kind of idea. I don't know if I've got that same sort of drive now. I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, and this is the thing. The reason why I asked that is because what you're seeing is, I posted earlier about this guy from the Soviet Union. He talks about the subversion. You just need to beat people down in every aspect where they just stop caring, right? Because if they were passionate about something, they'd be up in arms, shit was flying all around. Everyone just has this gray, right? Everyone's just kind of like mediocre. Everything is, there's a drab nothingness to everything.
Yeah, it's normally in a situation like that, which isn't so momentous in its outcome, I'll usually let like a leftist like kind of win an argument or something like that, and then when they get everything that they argued for, say, "See, that's what you were arguing for." No,
Yeah.
that's not what I wanted, but that's what you argued for.
Correct.
Now, normally I would just let this one play out, but like worldwide communism, everybody loses this one. There's no coming back from it. That's the problem.
I agree.
Go
And
Cuba.
I was going to actually ask you that question. I was going to ask you, I mean, Phil, if and when, and more likely when they fully succeed, unless there's an asteroid strike, there's not going to be a way out of it.
Not without something as momentous as, say, like World War III or something to the same effect. It's going to involve a lot of death.
World War III is going to be known as the Cuck War.
I mean,
you should purchase the rights now for the movie.
Yeah.
All right. Couple. Man, it's 4:30 in the morning here. Good God.
Keep forgetting, yeah, you're 2 hours ahead.
Yeah, that's not, and it's breaking my mind too.
Yeah.
All right. Wolfgang Deo says, when I said to church, I was talking about a place that forces marriage. Fix a church. Why are you trying to find women? Everyone has the wrong frame, and when they are in the right frame, they don't realize they need to fix what is broken. Also says, the same type of people that pretend to be MGTOW are the ones who get a sex doll but don't want to admit it. I love the idea of a sex doll. It's hilarious and awesome. However, they can only fuck a sex doll because they are pathetic. Fuck both.
Well, I got that from Paul Elam, though, didn't I? When I was interviewed by him, Tom Golden, and Janice Fiumengo.
He said that?
Not so much that. He was sort of like, I thought I'd best get this out of the way and just tell him that I'm MGTOW, because I know he's had beef with the MGTOW historically, so just in case that was a problem. So when he was bringing it up, it was a case of, so Phil, you're MGTOW. Like, you seem like a decent looking guy. Why are you MGTOW? It's like, I'm not MGTOW because like I have to be. I choose to be MGTOW. And I just don't think he'd ever approach that from a different way. I would like to say the same thing with like a lot of guys who own sex dolls. They're not buying a sex doll just because inceldom or anything like that. Most incels can't afford them. That's the problem. It's generally sort of like divorcees or like middle-aged men who tend to get them.
Thanks for the shout out to everyone in the Atlantic time zone there, Peter.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as Newfoundland time, which is 30 minutes ahead of Atlantic time.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know that was a thing.
It's a half a time zone.
Well, it's 8:30 in the morning here in London, so it's reasonable hour of the day.
Yeah, Phil's got his morning glow going. Wolfgang Deo also says, who cares if the military is good or bad in peacetime? Won't matter until a war starts. Gotta worry about it due to tyrants trying to be tyrants, yes. However, I fail to see how any institution has gotten worse. Are they doing stupid things? Yes. Also,
Well, with regards to the military, though, we might be judging this for the US as a bit of like a red pill win, but it's nobody wins for this now that they're actually going to say, you know, we can call up females to the draft and whatnot. I don't think there's really a place for women in the military unless they can actually pass the male entrance standard and keep up with the boys and like pick up a guy and drag him off the field of war.
that
If they can do
that
that, then
China
that's
chick.
fine.
Someone was yelling about China in the
You mean WE?
chat. Yeah, the WWF China chick. She probably could pass the male standards.
Well, if they can do it, then fine. But like, there's going to be like no more than 4 to 5% of women that can do that. But like now that they're sort of dropping the standards, it's just going to be the fucking killing fields if you actually get into like a stand-up war with another nation. Which, oh, excuse me, my Roomba has just. There we go. That's just kicked off. Yeah, if there's a stand-up war with China, which looks like it might happen in say, the South China Sea or something like that, these women are just going to get mown down. So, like, I don't see how anyone benefits from that.
Sounds
Any
like
quality benefits?
If it's
Sounds
gonna be
like your
mixed
microwave
battalions,
is going off.
that was my Roomba.
Yeah.
I've just sent it back home, so it's not
I
going to make any
think,
more noises.
Drex, I think the
Penance is sending
beeping
you a
means
text.
it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, that's all good. Penance is texting Phil. I mean, I'm not judging. Phil, I'm not judging. If you need to get it in with Penance and Maple tonight, I don't judge you, bro. I don't judge him.
Oh no, he did that before he went to bed.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. It might just be like a mid-morning thing, just
Yeah,
give you
right.
a little bit more pep to the day.
Phil, we will
Wolfgang
leave you
Gale.
with this. What do you think about these next wave of lockdowns that I hear that's coming to you guys, and how lockdowns are affecting people's relationships and if and when they want to get a doll? Because lockdowns seem to be when people have more excess time, excess money, excess thoughts, right? To be like this, Phil, I'm sitting in the house again. I got money. I did a Zoom call or two with some chick. It went horribly because these chicks are out of control with their demands and standards. Do you think that this is going to be a time when you're going to start seeing more and more dolls? As the laws get worse and it's just kind of a perfect storm, right?
Well, lockdown, it does create a bit of a surge in business, but I do question whether these people actually really want a doll or they just want something to stick their dick into, just for the meantime. Because initially, prior to lockdown, anything like that, there would be those guys who aren't expecting too much from a doll. It's just got to be just enough. And these are the guys that will end up getting maybe a second and third doll and they actually enjoy them. The guys who say it's not for them, they're expecting whether it's validation or they want the doll to move or something like that. And it just doesn't work for them. They want the absolute substitute of a woman. Whereas people who are happy with dolls generally are, it's not the same as a woman, but it's good enough. And they're okay with that. And I think anyone who buys a doll just because they're tired of lockdown and being on their own might fall into that demographic of like they're looking for a female substitute and it's not going to be for them. Although I do see more business due to lockdown. Now, lockdown's coming again. We've got this Delta variant, which you've all heard about. It's about 7 times less deadly than the regular beer virus. So, like, we've got all these cases. Like, no one's dying. So, and like everyone's panicking. Like the mainstream media is like almost having a hissy fit over the whole idea of, oh my God, look at all of these cases. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's always terrifying, right? They're insufferable. I always tell people, man, these people are actually insufferable.
But I just wish people would just like look at the stats and go, look at like what's actually happening. Look at all of the deaths. They're in like, we've managed to get them up into double figures now per day.
Yeah.
So, and like, but I think people just love the drama. People get bored with their life, so they want something to be either outraged about, frightened about, anything like that. It gives them something to talk about because their lives are just so drab and boring that this is like great for them. They love it. I mean, I've even noticed that in the MGTOW community, some guys who actually LARP on it's like MGTOW, and they love this whole idea of like trying to stick one over on the women and stuff.
Yeah, they're very adversarial.
Yeah, they're never true MGTOWs, but like
it's true.
As I said, they just LARP on.
Well, Phil, I actually quickly discussed that. I just kind of gave you like a quick couple of words, which is there's actual misogyny in the manosphere now. I shouldn't even say now. I mean, it's been there where it's just like, I hate them. Grr. It's just kind of like, I mean, that's not going to solve anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got time to actually hate on women, one, you're not MGTOW. Because if you're hating on women, you hate the unfairness of it all. So therefore, you're yearning for the plantation once again.
Yep.
So you're not MGTOW. And if you are LARPing as MGTOW, you're doing it wrong. Because just let women do their thing, and then get on with concentrating on you.
Yeah, I think it's a myth that Drexel hates women. No, he loves them often.
Yeah, dude. Here's the thing. TFM talks about this, which is he loves women the way they are because that's how they're designed. Where the issue comes is when people keep trying to change and adapt and move around them and stuff, and that's where all these problems come from. Here's the thing: if women were meant to be different, they would be different, but they're not. And we need to accept that instead of being mad. Like it'd be like women being mad at guys for being guys, right? Like Phil, I don't like that you like watching the game and you're content. And it kind of go back to what Phil said. You actually see this in their actions. That's why Phil and his buddies watch the game. She's mad because she can't be content by just sitting there watching the game. She can't.
Hence the whole sort of penis envy and feminism, why they all want to be guys, because then they'll just be happy for the first time in their lives. And
dude, and they're so miserable.
2 more chats and we'll call it a night. Wolfgang Deo says, I mean, World War III is probably going on right now. Sun Tzu would argue the best way to wage war is through culture, which is happening now.
Yeah.
And there is
you said earlier.
Yeah, and there is a type of insurgency going on too, since we are fighting culture everywhere. Not sure.
Absolutely.
Not the future.
Also, cultures are being dissolved, aren't they? That's it seems to be the modus operandi of pretty much all the Western governments. Assimilate
into the gray-faced NPC. That's what CNN wants.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everyone. You have no nation, no beliefs, and you're just like a drone.
Wolfgang Dale says women are pretty fierce in terrorist-ridden areas. I have no problem fighting with women alongside me. Look at Israel.
Well,
they're a special case. They're a very special case. All right. Well, Phil, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to thank RPM and get him to plug his stuff before I fell asleep. But
everybody go to RPM and definitely look out for his latest and greatest HMT, courtesy of one and only Dollhouse Phil. I will definitely be clicking on that video as soon as it's up tomorrow.
Is it the one I forwarded to?
Oh, okay, yeah, it's up today. Oh, damn.
Yeah, it was one he just posted. No, the one he's got coming up either today or tomorrow, depending on which time zone you're in. I think that's the one he said. He gave us a preview. He said the guy literally, there's a video, and the guy literally put a mask on before he did the deed.
That's beautiful. God bless him. Phil, I love hearing these hoes take L's, man. I really do.
It's just the fact that the mainstream media is suppressing it so much. I mean,
they do everything they can.
It should be front page news when if a guy did these things to like a room of guys, it'd be like, oh, just look at this, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But the fact that women are getting their comeuppance, it's like just don't say anything.
Don't say anything. There is no problem. Yep.
So Drex, closing thought for Thot Girl Summer.
My only closing thought would just be, dude, accept the reality of 2021. Don't listen to these old people out here that give you a false narrative of what's happening. Phil knows what's going on. These young bucks know what's going on. Guys who are listening to this know what's going on. Just accept it for what it is and just stay on your own purpose, man. Don't be out here listening to some guy trying to shame you because you're not high value enough, or shame you because you're gay, you don't want to get married or whatever. Don't listen to that, man. The Thot Girl Summer is all interconnected because Thot Girl Summer is directly interconnected, Phil, with relationships, is it not?
Absolutely.
Because Phil, look, she's doing the most. Well, I guess I'm not going to commit. And when you don't commit, what do you get, Phil? Where are the good men? Right? And think about it, that's why they're miserable, right? Like these girls, dude. If you guys have you ever seen a girl who cashed in her chips early and she's content in her marriage, and her single girlfriends always want to get her out of that environment and come down to girls' trips in Vegas, right?
It actually happened to a celebrity in the UK. She was like a singer, and she made like a career of her own right. She was quite famous. She married a high-ranking English footballer at the time, and they were like almost like a poster couple because they're both very good looking. They had kids and stuff like that. And then after, like, the kids weren't grown up, but like, at school, stuff like that, probably about like 12, 13 years old. And she went and she was hanging around a few other celebrities who were all single. Then all of a sudden they convinced her to divorce the husband and go her own way.
I did hear about that.
And now she's pissed at the whole thing. I did the wrong thing.
Yeah, someone did a video. Did RPM? Was under someone did a video about that. I know exactly what you're talking about now. Someone did a video, and you can't tell them nothing, man.
All right. Yep. Well, everyone here in the studio, appreciate you coming out. Everyone watching us live on YouTube, really appreciate the support. Thanks for the likes. I think we got 219 likes on the video. That was great. Great job, guys. I know this is a little shorter than you're used to from Phil and Drex, but we hadn't gone live in a while. We didn't do anything in the month of June, so it was overdue. Believe me, we'll hit the ground hard. We'll hit the ground harder than Drex is going to hit Susan.
Well, and we'll definitely, like I said, we'll definitely see about a panel. Maybe getting Phil back with RGE, RPM, those guys, and just kind of shooting the shit because, Phil, we've talked about this. There's just nowhere else. And something that I'll leave you with this, Phil. Did you notice just how much red pill content was created and consumed? That's the big thing during the lockdowns, right? That's when all these channels started blowing up.
Yeah.
Right? Last year. Like
Interesting.
You kind of caught that, right? Like think about it. A lot of these channels were, they're coming along, but during that lockdown, man, you just started seeing people, they were hungry for it because they wanted answers. A lot of these guys were seeking out answers. And as they started to get them, they started to adapt more. That's why, if you notice, as the restrictions eased up, guys you heard about the stories that were reported on the boob tube that a lot of women were looking for hot girl summers. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of these girls are getting hot girl summers. They're getting more and more videos of what, Phil? Guys don't approach us. What happened? That's what they're getting.
What you girls asked for.
Is what you asked for. Like, dude, the hot girl summer is not working out the way I predict, because I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like the roaring 20s. These simps are gonna be out in full force. The alpha's gonna. No, it was kind of like, Guys, go retreat to Pornhub.
Hooray!
Until the Thot apocalypse happens.
Yeah, and the simp-pocalypse.
Oh, there'll be a Thot-pocalypse in September, and we'll be right here at the MGTOWN Podcast to bring you all the hard-hitting reporting.
Oh, I can't wait.
Until next time, everyone. Stay frosty.
Peace.